All right, we ready?
Hey, Jonathan, my video doesn't seem to be working. I'm opening up my other computer.
Okay.
I don't know why I have no video.
And I got a text from Ingrid a couple hours ago saying she'd be really close to being able to make it in time, so she probably will be joining us at some point. Carl helped me out with this, but we've already taken a roll call, so we are coming back into a meeting that we called to order at 3:15.
This meeting is being recorded.
Anyone else get that echo?
Yeah.
Let's see. And let's see. Deborah, I think you are over. Deborah texted me and asked me to bring her over, but I think she's there. You are. So anyway, for the public's sake, we went into a meeting at 3:15. We called roll. We entered into executive session. We adjourned out of executive session. So now we are coming back after like an hour and a half break. Is kind of the logistics
Yeah,
of it.
that's where we're at. Just for the public's knowledge, that executive session ended. There was no action by council. You guys just called a recess to come back in at 6:15 tonight. So your past roll call, whatever's next on the agenda. Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda changes and conflicts. All right, hearing none, I'll move on. Running through it tonight. Citizens appearing before council for items not appearing on the agenda. This is not on the agenda. Janelle Tongo. Janelle, please let us know if you're a citizen of Glenwood Springs, and you have 3 minutes.
Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, City Council. My name is Janelle Togno. I do reside on Cooper Avenue in downtown Glenwood Springs. I am back again to bring up the topic of wildlife vehicle collisions on Highway 82. This time, I also have a petition with 218 signatures of Roaring Fork Valley citizens who agree that this is an issue that requires action. Humans have been the driving force of change since the Industrial Revolution, and it is time to change our narrative from dominating and developing to stewardship and preservation. Highway 82 is a main commuter road that also intersects with natural migration corridors. A migration corridor is a path that animals use to travel between summer and winter habitats. The knowledge of these areas is often passed down from generation to generation of wildlife species, so the same corridors are consistently used year after year. There are numerous wildlife vehicle collisions on Highway 82 that interrupt traffic flow and impact the safety of drivers and wildlife. Faced with longer wildfire seasons and an increase of safety personnel needed each summer, it seems apparent we need to conserve our resources. Conserve our resources and have our police, fire, and medical staff better utilized. Building wildlife corridors over the highway will encourage wildlife to use these passages and avoid roadways, which would drastically reduce wildlife vehicle collisions. Officers being called out to remove a carcass is a misuse of their time and can be avoided by improving highway infrastructure with wildlife overpasses. According to the executive director of Rocky Mountain Insurance, the average property damage cost of an animal collision is estimated at about $3,103, which is up 1.7% from the previous year. CDOT also reports that an average of 3,000 collisions a year occur in the state of Colorado, and that is only the ones that are reported. We can easily reduce these occurrences by updating our infrastructure and giving wildlife an alternative route. I would be happy to give a full presentation on the effectiveness and benefits of these projects, some of which are even in this state. I've pinpointed the ideal locations of placement on Highway 82 that would provide safe passage for wildlife over the highway away from motorists. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you so much. Hold on one second. I'm going to be promoting Ingrid so she can join us. Let the record reflect that Ingrid Russo, Councilor Russo, is now joining council during public comment. Anybody else for public comment? Jennifer. Jennifer, same story. Can you give your name, address, and you're limited to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Jonathan. This is Jennifer Vanyan at 1016 Minter Avenue in Glenwood Springs. I would like to talk about the last meeting that City Council decided to put an RFP out for South Canyon. And I just wanted to mention that the city had paid $10,000 to have the Historical Society produce a study, an assessment of the historical sites and treasures up at South Canyon. And I'm pretty sure the society hopes to complete it this summer. So I think it would be helpful for the city with all the upcoming changes and beneficial to have patience to get that study done first and reviewed before any other projects begin. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Other public comment. Brianne McCall.
Hi, my name is Brianna McCallum. I live at 605 West Columbia Court, Glenwood Springs, Colorado. And I am here speaking on behalf of the same issue that Jennifer mentioned about South Canyon, but for a little other reasons. I'm here to ask City Council to retract the motion on the 60 days RFP and 8 weeks community input, which we're already 2 weeks into and have not had any community input on developing the last 3,000 acres of city property and parklands. I think most citizens would find it hard to go along with the 60-day RFP period of time. I mean, just for example, look at what you guys did on Midland, which I think is going to be a great asset to this community, but it's been over 4 years. And I think with lots of community involvement, it's going to turn out great. So I'd encourage City Council not to move so quickly on the last largest parcel of land in the city and to follow the Parks and Rec staff recommendation for plenty of community and stakeholders input. Additionally, due to all these large projects happening in the city at this time, I think it's completely appropriate to use this time for more community involvement and the planning process. That being said, I appreciate your guys' time and dedication to the city, and therefore I think we can all agree that this will be a wonderful asset as long as it has proper planning and can be a great community effort. Thanks again for your guys' time.
Thanks, Brianna. Jim Owell.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. I just wanted to endorse and strengthen what both Jennifer and Brianna have said. I think they're on the right track. I think it takes time to do this. We've certainly been dawdling around for nearly 40 years on this project, but now it's coming to fruition. So let's do it right. Let's not rush into anything. Let's get the information from the Historical Society and whatever other sources we have and put together a really first-rate report and proposal. Again, I endorse both what Jennifer and Brianna are saying. I think they're totally on the right track. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else? All right, seeing none. we will move on to council comments. If you don't mind, I might go first, just respond a little bit to some of the commenters. I think that's what they're saying is fair. When we made this decision a couple of weeks ago, I think we wanted to, the idea was to be clear, concise, and give the community an idea of what we were trying to do and in what timeline. And I think sometimes maybe the rush to clarity, to provide clarity, got caught up a little bit in our excitement. So, we're hearing some feedback that it's maybe not enough time. I would tend to agree with that, having reflected a little bit on that and hearing these citizen comments, excuse me. Citizens sometimes do impact what we think, not just other council members. But with that, I would like to, I know council comments isn't maybe the best time to do this, but maybe do re-examine that and say, if staff, as long as an RFP can go out by the end of the year, I would love to give staff as much time as they need. Also, when we did this 2 years ago, we didn't have massive mudslides in our watershed. We didn't have public works people working 24/7. We didn't have public or parks people, bare bones. A lot of our city is bare bones right now. And I don't think I truly appreciated a couple of weeks ago how much that would impact everything. So if there's any other support, again, as long as the RFP goes out by the end of the year, I'd love to give staff as much time as they need to complete that process, that public outreach process, bring it back to us for a look over, and then send it out. Would I have any support in extending that? Go ahead, Paula. And you know what? I'm sorry. Tony's hand was up. Tony, did you want to say so? Okay. Not about this topic. Okay. I got your hand for the next time, though. Okay. Go ahead, Paula.
All right. I'm just going to comment on this, but I would like to come back and comment after Tony comments. But I agree. I think that this should be moved back and given some time and thought. I was pretty impressed in watching the proceedings last week by video. I wasn't here. But it seems like there was a lot of back and forth, and it felt like just from watching it that this just needs a little more time to gel. So I'd appreciate it if people had a bit more time to put something together, and it would be great if, I think at one point, maybe it was in the reading of it, that my sense was getting a citizens group together and people asked to participate in that. So I didn't really hear that in last week's watching the video, and maybe I missed that, but if that could be incorporated, that'd be great.
Again, I'll probably respond to your comments. I guess if that's, I'll make the formal motion, I guess, to give staff enough time to complete the public process with the RFP going up by the end of the year. I will leave it up to staff to determine if they need a group or not, or if that's helpful, or if it's more work. So if this doesn't pass and you want to offer that up, then that's great. But I'm just pretty cautious about requiring staff to bring, people together if there's more efficient ways for them to get similar information. I would imagine they'll reach out to groups as well.
I'll second that if that's a motion, Jonathan.
It is. Councilor Davis. Nope. You were going to second it. Okay. Is there any other comments on the motion? All right. It's been moved by Deborah. Was the motion clear enough that you feel okay? Boom with myself, seconded by Shelley. All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Councilor Hershey voting no. Go ahead. Charlie, is it about the motion or is it more council comments?
I voted no as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see that. Thank you. I appreciate that. 5-2, motion carries. Councilor Hershey, you're up.
Well, I didn't have anything earth shattering. I just wanted to say, as this experiment in democracy ends, after 15 or 16 months of this quarantine and Zoom. I wanted to thank Alyssa and the staff of IT, but really the staff everywhere at all these companies that have come together to create Zoom and WebEx and make it so much easier for us to meet like this. I know that it hasn't been perfect, and there's certainly been some bumpy rides with this, with the 7 of us or 6 of us, and before Ingrid was here. But I wanted to thank them. It's run very well, and I know hopefully the next meeting or the meeting after that will be back in person. But I might, maybe in a few months, even miss Zoom a little bit. Maybe not. But I wanted to thank her very much and her staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Shelley, then Paula, then Charlie. Go ahead. I'm sorry, did I say Shelley? Go ahead. Sorry. Is it okay, Paula, if I could just do Shelley? She's hands up next. Go ahead, Shelley.
Okay, I'm fine to go now. I just wanted to bring up, I know we've had a lot going on in Glenwood, but I wanted to bring up something that happened in one of our Front Range communities, and over in Arvada. Actually, I have a friend that's on the Arvada City Council there, and as everyone probably knows, they were devastated a little over a week ago by a shooting there in their town. And actually they're grieving over that. It occurred right in the heart of their downtown. And it just really came home to me to have that happen in a friend's community so close, and to realize that that can just happen anywhere and anytime. And that's part of our reality nowadays. And I think as it's very tragic to the community, and it's heartbreaking for them and disruptive. And so I'd like to take, if I can request that we take a moment of silence tonight to just reflect on the lives lost in Arvada, and especially those of the police officer, Gordon Beasley. And then there was also a citizen acting as a good Samaritan, John Hurley. But I'd like to take special note that our police work tirelessly every day to protect and serve our community. And the difficulty of dealing with these acts of violence just makes their job that much harder. So just wondering, Mr. Mayor, if we could take a moment to honor and respect these public servants tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Shelley, if you want to kind of lead us in that moment and maybe bring us out of it. That'd be great.
Okay. I don't know what's an appropriate amount of time for this, but maybe.
Probably longer than feels normal is my experience.
Okay. I'll let you call that. Maybe if we can do a moment of silence. So
Sure.
Yeah, would be great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Shelley, for bringing that up. I think that's really important. Do you have other comments?
Not tonight. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Paula.
Just I have a heads up for some reason, because I'm on my own computer. I'm having to go all sorts of places just to raise my hand and stuff. So I'm not sure what's going on. But anyway, aside from that, a couple of things. I had a phone call from somebody saying that they received information about taking the poll, and it led to some places that the poll that we recently, I think last time you guys approved doing a poll, and I was a little concerned. I didn't think it would be ready yet and out. So just need some clarification so I can get back to that person. Or maybe it is out and we need to tell the public. Maybe Deborah, can you address this? Is the poll already being shared with the community?
Yes, it is. I believe at the last meeting, you guys, council gave us direction that it was to be Carl and I were to work on it, and Steve and Ingrid were to have final, it's okay, get it out the door. And we were supposed to get it out the door by last Friday. I think it really got out the door on Monday due to just some miscommunications. It is definitely out.
Okay, so then the person who called me commented that it took that when they linked on it and went to take the poll, they couldn't get access to it. So, and this was yesterday, so maybe we can just check on that.
Could you have her give me a call?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be good, because it'd be good to know more to try to trace that down.
Okay, all right, I'll do that. For some reason, I hadn't thought it had already gone out, so I was gonna bring that up. Anyways, okay. I noticed watching the video last week and this week that we had the young woman commenting about the wildlife corridor, and I just want to clarify that would be on county property. I mean, we don't really have wildlife corridors potential here in town, right? I mean, can we at least say maybe take this to the county or CDOT as just so that she can move forward on that. Anyway, so I just wanted to bring that to attention. And then two other things is I was speaking the other day, I think with Shelley, and she informed me that we're completely, broadband is completely available in town now, or it's pretty widespread. And I just didn't know where we were at on that. I wondered if we could get a presentation on the reach of broadband at this point and next steps.
Yeah, we are definitely not everywhere in town because I know we can't get it yet. And we can't for a while still where I live. I think we're pushing it out in certain places. We're having pretty good uptake. I don't think that Matt can't really do that at the spur of the moment, but I'll ask him to come back with an update.
Sure. Yeah. Anything within the next couple months is fine. But I was just like, wait, I want it too. So it's a little selfishness on my part.
I've been trying my best to get it to my house, but they just don't care.
No. Okay. Just so the community knows. And then the last thing I would love to bring back, just if we can get a chance to discuss in the near future, if the property behind Walmart's been cleaned and what our next step as a city and a city council on involvement there. So if we could bring that up in a future agenda, that'd be great. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Paula. Councilor Wusso.
Thanks, all. I'm actually coming this evening from Thermopolis, Wyoming. So if you're curious where I am, I'm coming back from vacation. I've had an opportunity to really see how much even Wyoming and Montana have been impacted by the same employment scarcity that we're all struggling with in Glenwood. So we're not alone. And I don't know that that gives us any comfort. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is that I received, and I think many other council members received, an email from the general manager of the Colorado Water District encouraging us to discuss permanent water restrictions as we are in this drought. And I, once again, similar to where I was 2 weeks ago, I think we need to take some serious consideration and a look at how we're managing water in our community. And so if others are supportive of that and talking about maybe even a block of time where we do water restrictions for exterior, I would love to have that dialogue.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Ingrid, I was going to let you know, I think that we are planning an fairly extensive work session at the next meeting to start diving. I mean, there's an update tonight, much shorter, but to start talking about those issues.
That's perfect. Oftentimes I do this where my council comments are just a segue to something we're doing later on in the evening. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ingrid. Anyone else? Yeah, I want to also, I guess, echo Councilor Hershey's comments. Zoom did not start off for us well. And I mean the entire council, I don't just mean you and I. But it's tough. It's tough to do these things. We had an executive session today and it was really, really nice getting back in front of you all. We serve at the pleasure of the citizens. We also serve each other as citizens. So I think that's great. I'm looking forward to hearing about our next meeting and if they can be without Zoom potentially. And I'm looking forward to that. Also, I want to throw out kudos. Kudos is probably just a weak word for our public works department, our entire department. I would love to start naming off people. And I did the other day when we did this Facebook Live. But inevitably I miss people of importance, but I can't go without saying, I'll recognize their leader, Matt Langhorse. Deborah has been on this like a dog on a bone. These water slides, these mudslides. Yes, it shuts down I-70 and that gets the headlines across the state. But what impacts us severely is our tap water, domestic water, and to Ingrid's point, yes, our irrigation water as well. And I think staff did an excellent job. I know some people are cranky about being woken up at 5:30 in the morning, but when you're in an emergency, whether it's fire bearing down on you or you have to start conserving water right now, this second, I foresee us getting more calls like that. And that's not convenient on a Sunday morning when people want to sleep in, but that is what it is. So I make absolutely no apologies for that, and want to encourage staff in this council to continue to make hard leadership decisions like the ones that were suggested by Andy Mueller, the Executive Director of Colorado Water District, and look at how we can prevent and conserve water in a really more dramatic and aggressive way in the future. Let's see. Again, thank you, Public Works. You guys are heroes. You work around the clock 24/7 to get things up and going. People don't even know what you did. I had a couple other things I wanted to say, but I think anything I say past this probably diminishes from my main point of thank you, Public Works. Anybody else? Okay. Now I'm going to the scorecard here. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
That was Charlie who had the second.
Oh, no.
Okay. Oh, Paula. Sorry. Motion by Charlie, second by Paul. All in favor, signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? I don't think I see anybody opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Next item is, speaking about our wonderful Public Works staff, debris flow update and response. Do I need to bring somebody over? I would think I do, Mr. Langhorst. There we go.
All right. We are going to need at least one, if not two more people. Leanne Miller is out in the group. Could you grab her and Warren, please? Warren Hayes.
They are grabbed.
Okay. Good evening, council. I appreciate the time. I know this was kind of an add-on at the last minute, but I thought you'd want to know what happened, why, and to the best of our recollection from not sleeping for about 2.5 days, how we got through it. Leanne Miller is the main design engineer from Carollo Engineers that helped redesign the plant over the very short time frame and get it built. Warren Hayes is obviously, you've met Warren probably along the line, but Warren is our plant operators. He's the superintendent of the water and the wastewater plant. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. I am going to put a quick slideshow up that Leanne was gracious enough to put together because I didn't have time to do it. And she did a great job, and we will kind of fumble through it because we've been working all day on water issues. And we haven't had a chance really to rehearse this one. So let's see here. Let's see. Okay, now I got to fix my screen. I am not going to try to put this in slideshow presentation because it always just goes awry. So can you all see that okay?
We can.
Okay. So Grizzly Creek Fire water quality event. This event started happening June 26th, Saturday, I believe around 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was actually out of cell range at that moment, which my team did a great job. They all reacted. Mike, Warren, Leanne, everybody reacted quite quickly and efficiently on this situation. But sorry, I'm gonna flip slides here. But what really happened is we had a rainstorm event that occurred over the No Name basins. No Name, Grizzly, actually up and down the valley. It was quite a large rainstorm event. It was up on the 4 mile area where I was. We sheltered in place. There was hail, there was lightning. It was quite amazing. I knew I was probably coming back to a disaster, so I drove back down as soon as possible. But the event happened all the way up and down the valley. It was about 3 days worth of events. First day debris flow. We saw this one debris flow when we walked up No Name. Basically the next morning. It's just kind of a ground shot of it. It's actually quite long. It goes up and down the creek several hundred feet. The creek, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
The creek actually used to come through here. The creek now is actually shifted just out of the picture, and it goes around this and up against the trail when you walk up No Name. So it shifted quite a bit to the east. We'll just kind of go through what the day's occurrences were. That was kind of the worst case scenario for us at that point. We had been planning for large debris flows for this whole entire time. We've built the tunnel. We were expecting a certain amount of water quality associated with it. To be honest with you, we were more worried about the intakes being taken out by a debris flow versus the water itself being so muddy and flowy, it was actually untreatable. Second day debris flow, what actually happened the second day we saw was somewhere between 3 and 4 debris flows. The first debris flow got doubled up on, and there were 3 more events farther down the stream and closer to the intake. None of the events actually came to the intake itself to do any destruction other than what you can see right here. Hopefully you can see this on your screen fairly well. This is not chocolate milk. This is the water actually coming down the stream. And you can't probably see it very well. This is actually the water. They took a sample of it, and we read turbidity levels anywhere between 0 and 5,000 or so. This water is undetectable. We can't actually tell what the turbidity is, and it's basically so high that it doesn't measure up anymore. And for a reference, this is usually what comes out of the the creek. This is a 6 NTU. This is unreadable NTU. So yeah, I think you guys saw these today a little bit, but for the public, you basically what comes out of that creek is usually pure, basically water at a 6 NTU level. So, but what we saw on June 27th was basically 2,500 all the way up to unreadable, which is what these pictures are showing. This is our intake. We did get the intake shut off, but some water did make it over to the overflow and a little bit made it into the tunnels, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Next day, June 28th, was actually a smaller slide. You can see it. We walked up today. We hadn't actually been up there until today. You can walk up there and it slid again on the large debris flow at the very top a third time. You can see it, how it starts to layer. Actually, it's pretty interesting geologic formation. But you can see there was a third slide, and we had the No Name tunnel shut off. We were actually off Roaring Fork water when the third one happened. But we did see the mud come through the intake building because we have turbidity meters up there, and we saw it peg out and then start to drop back down during the day. So there was another slide event on the 28th. This picture over on the side over here, I apologize, it's a little small. This is the No Name intake on June 30th. So this water is still extremely muddy. The creek is still flowing through all of those debris flows. It flows around them, and actually it flows through the debris flows themselves because they're made out of rock and silt and clay. The water actually permeates them and comes down. Eventually it should settle and the water should stop going through them. But as of June 30th, this is what the water looked like. If I can get another example here, you're plus or minus 650 to 800 NTU. So basically just very, very dirty water, but not to the extent of the first bottle over there. Obviously the debris flows impacted the water quality over the weekend quite a bit for us. The problem is that these water quality impacts are going to continue on. If it rains today, we would anticipate more debris flows. The debris flows will flow through, the water will flow through the new debris flows. It will bring more muddy water down to the intake. We'll have to decide at those times, is that water better than the Roaring Fork water? Problem with Roaring Fork water is, as you all know, we have marble and we have Lake Christine fire. So whenever it rains over one of those two, we either kind of get tannish mud water out of marble, or we get some really nasty water out of the Lake Christine burn fire also. So those are our 3 water sources we have available to us, is Grizzly Creek, No Name, Grizzly Creek flows to No Name, so it has to go through the debris flows one way or the other. And then obviously the Roaring Fork itself, which is on a day-to-day basis, ever changing. I'm going to put up another slide, and Leanne is going to go over this one. And I do want to say one thing about Leanne. She is extremely smart. We all know that. But she showed up Saturday basically at 6 o'clock and worked for, I don't know, 28, 30 hours straight to make sure that our plant was operating well. She was leading the team, helping us all learn, because none of us have ever dealt with water of this quality before, nor have we probably seen water of this quality before. So I want to give a big props to Leanne. She did a great job, and she had other people from Carollo on the phone at all hours of the morning to make sure we got through this event. So I can't thank her enough for this. But you want to kind of talk about this one?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. And it was definitely a team effort. The city staff was pretty incredible too. It was a great effort by all of us. But Matt sort of stole my thunder with his live in-person bottles. But essentially, what we have here on the screen is showing you the different turbidities at different NTU, which is the measurement for turbidity. So over here on the left, 4,000, that was one of the highest readings that we got at the plant. And we saw that at the No Name intake as well. 2,000 is the next one over. 800 is where we were actually treating water coming into the plant. 400 NTU, we were treating that water coming into the plant. And over here on the right-hand side, that 3.3 NTU is what came out of the Roaring Fork today. So, this is a pretty wide range. I would say last year, the facility would have thought, 5 to 10 NTU was a pretty high day. And now, 3.3 or 5 or 10 seems like kind of no big deal after last weekend. Next slide. So this is just the readings from the remote tribetometer that's located up at the No Name intake. So you can see there on Saturday at 4 o'clock, we pegged out the meter. It only transmits 500 NTU. You can kind of see it start to ramp up, and then it just stays stagnant for a while. But that happened on Friday, and then again on Saturday, and then again on Sunday. And you can see on Sunday, it didn't really come back down to that low level that it did on Saturday. So we're still in that stagnant upper 50s, 60s for quite some time throughout the rest of the weekend and early into this week on the No Name source. This is just a little bit of a historical perspective. So here is a graph showing the raw water turbidity coming into the plant from 2018 until June 26. So you can see the peak, 2019, everyone remembers the river summer that never ended, and we were rafting for months on end in peak flow conditions and had lots of runoff, and it was really exciting. And that peak was 15 NTU in 2019. So, a very different scenario to what we're going to see on the next slide, where we add in the last weekend, and you can see there's no variation because everything that we were seeing in the plant in the final week of June was just off the charts. So we went from our peak in 2019 of 16 NTU to 1,600, treating water at 1,600 NTU coming into the water treatment plant. So quite a big difference in water quality there. Matt, you want to talk a little bit about what happened on Saturday?
Yes, I do. So basically the debris flow caused a wave of mud, what we believe happens, debris flow came down, it actually blocked the river for a duration of time. It kind of built up behind it. It found the lowest pathway around it, and it took that. So we kind of experienced kind of a wave of mud on Saturday. And you can see that in the turbidity meter where it kind of just spiked, and then it dropped back down again pretty quickly thereafter. So the way we had everything set up, when the meter spiked, what happened is we have 2 gates within the cave in there. One gate sends water just directly into the tunnel and directly over to the canyon's tanks. When the meter hits a certain volume or a certain turbidity, it shuts that main gate and it diverts water over to we'll call it the mini sediment removal basin that we have in there. It's kind of like a little mini pre-treatment system, just like we have on our water plant. The problem with this is that we can basically take 1,000, and Leanne can correct me, 1,000 NTU water into that pre-treatment basin, run it through there, and it'll come out at 100. And then from that point, it can be sent to the plant. We can deal with 100 NTU at the plant, and then it processes through at a slower rate than it would if it was 6, but at a pretty decent rate so we can supply water to the city. What happened is the water was at 4,000 NTU, and our meter wasn't reading that. It pegs out at 500, which we are working on. So I didn't know that it was too high, and it didn't shut off that secondary gate just to force the water down the overflow. So for a duration of time, we were treating called 4,000 NTU water, which is 4 times the threshold. And some of that water got into our main system. So it got into the tunnel, the pipes, and the canyon tanks. So what we did, found that out, shut it off. The crews worked effortlessly on Saturday night, basically through the entire night, trying to flush that material back out of the system. So Saturday night, canyon tanks, pumps, everything were drained, but we couldn't completely remove all that sediment within the systems, but we needed to turn the water back on. Roaring Fork at that time, if I remember, was running over 600 NTU also. So we were like, okay, so which one's worse for us? What we don't know is in the pipe or what's within the Roaring Fork. And we needed to flush the pipes in the system anyhow. So what we decided to do was pass water through the no name because it had dropped, pass water through there, push it to the plant. And what they saw coming out the other end, and Leanne can correct me on this, was somewhere around 1,600 NTU material. That makes it into the plant. Plant's already got some freshish water in it, mixes with it. We ended up with about 800 NTU material. It was a giant glug that they basically had to process through the plant. But the reason we put watering restrictions on, we should have done it at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was trying not to wake everybody up, but tanks were dropping because everybody was irrigating, is that the plant still functions at 800 NTU. It takes a lot of manipulation through the team to do that, but it moves much slower. So if on a normal day, we can run the plant at 5 million gallons a day, I don't, Leanne can tell me exactly, but maybe we're running 500,000 gallons a day at that moment. What were we running at totally?
We were at 2.3, I believe.
So,
Is that right, Warren? So we had slowed way down.
Warren's not counting. Yep. So it doesn't really matter. The basis of it all is we have to slow the plant down. We can run at 800 NTU if we have to. You have to slow the plant down. It takes a lot of staff time to do it. It takes a lot of chemical to do it. So it's not something we want to do every single day. And the problem is almost everybody waters at night because we asked them to, and this is all happening during the peak watering hours. So all we were doing is watching 12th Street tank drop, Cardiff tank drop, Red Mountain tank drop, because everybody was using so much water at that moment and we could not push enough water out to keep up with that consumption. So basically we said, hey, reverse 911, sorry about it. When you wake up or you get this thing, please turn your irrigation systems off, cut down in domestic use, because not only do we have to continue pushing this through the plant, we have to then catch back up, which we usually do at night. And at night, we're not catching up right now. So that's why watering restrictions stayed on as long as they did. One, it was raining. Nobody really needed to water the grass anyhow. 2, we needed to fill the tanks back up. There were points of the night and into the next day that if we had a fire in a couple locations, we might not have had enough water to actually fight a house fire. So it was getting to the point of scary, which is why we did make the phone call at 5:30 in the morning. It was not something I really wanted to do, but we had to do it. So next page. We'll wrap this up. We only have a couple more slides. Leanne, you're going to go over this one.
Yep. So, this is actually kind of the success story here. We did a lot of work on the plant over the winter, a solid 6 months of improvements, and we designed to handle 1 to 200 NTU at rated capacity of the facility. And so 800 NTU was way above that, but slowing the plant down. You can see here the finished water quality that we put out at the end of last week was right in line with everything that we've been doing for the most part over the past 2 years. So there was no water quality impacts that we saw on the effluent side for the treatment plant, making the modifications that we did on Saturday and Sunday. So that was really exciting. And then this next slide is just a close-up.
Before we get to that one, I want to point something out on this one. With the old plant configured as it was and the processing techniques we had before, you can see the summer of 2019 when we had those higher spikes in the runoff. You can see we're well above where we were when we put out water at 800 NTU, and that water was only 16. This plant, I know people are like, hey, did you spend all this money on this plant to do this? That money was well worth it, because if we didn't have the plant upgraded, we wouldn't have had water for days. It wouldn't be pushing water through at a slower rate. we would have had to shut the entire plant down and not supply any water to the city of Glenwood Springs for a duration of time. And that would not have been a pleasant conversation, let alone a reverse 911. So I want everybody to understand that this plant operated just as we had anticipated it to. We had a small glitch because of a meter issue within the cave itself that caused us to get a glug in there. We had to deal with the glug. That glitch has basically been resolved at this point, and we're coming up with even better solutions to those problems. Keep going.
Great.
They
No,
got
that's a
other things to do tonight.
Great clarification. This is just the 15-minute data showing the same thing. So you can see here, we did increase turbidity for 30, 45 minutes here, but very minor. And up here you see the federal drinking water quality standard at 0.3 NTU, so still way below the federal standard for turbidity.
We'll roll through these so that you guys can ask questions if you would like to. Recall the goals for 2021 improvements. Our goals were protect the critical infrastructure. We did that. The intakes held up really nicely. We're going to go to Grizzly tomorrow to make sure it's still in good shape, but it should be. Develop solutions that address anticipated water quality challenges, public health issues. We maintained that. It was well below the public health guidelines. It was actually better than it was in 2019 when they kicked it out. Maintain finished water quality standards. That is our goal. Either if we're off the Roaring Fork or off the No Name, that water isn't going out the door unless it meets our standards, which are greater than the state standards. Solutions installed and ready for spring runoff 2021. We had everything ready to go. We got everything done about a month and a half ago, which is good that we did get it done. And it was up and running, and we're learning every single day on it. Provide early warning systems, allow time for response. We did have that. We learned that our meter probably doesn't go high enough. We were never anticipating 4,000. Is a number. So we'll adjust that and make adjustments to that. And I think we did invest dollars wisely. The improvements will have 100% long-term benefits. If we're going to continue to see these debris flows and rain events, and we're going to have to switch between No Name and the Roaring Fork, we don't know which one's going to be good or bad at that time. We can actually process everything. We may have to still call people and say, you have to turn your irrigation off for the day because we need to catch back up, or we need to slow the plant down. But we're still going to provide you all the water you need for daily life minus irrigation, which is extremely water consuming. Summary and highlights, extreme water quality event. We were not anticipating that. No damage at the intake, reduced plant capacity, high water. We didn't have to there were no violations for CDPHE as far as I'm aware of. Through the whole entire ordeal, we didn't have to do a boil order, which does happen in some occasions in districts. We are currently using Roaring Fork water right now. The Roaring Fork's running pretty clean. It wasn't yesterday. We had a little high NTU event there, but it wasn't anything the plant couldn't handle, and the team did a great job. Today, we were supposed to finish flushing the best we can the No Name system. If No Name water stays up and is good and we don't have rain events, we'll be switching back and forth between the two. We've come up with new strategies to get past these little glitches that we had at the beginning. And reverse 911 calls will be limited to the Glenwood Springs area next time. When we called dispatch, they apparently had a boundary for us that encompassed all of 81601. So we called 11,000 people instead of 4,000 basic residents. So we've corrected that. They noticed they had an error. We've been working with them the last couple of days and got that corrected. I basically have talked about all of these things at this point. I apologize. I kind of got ahead of myself, but our main issue was I would say the turbidity meter within the intake structure itself, not being able to read high enough. We're coming up with new data transfer abilities. Carl's helping us with that process a little bit because there's some legalities behind it of what I would like to do to make the system basically as bomb-proof as possible. So I'm going to stop there and let you ask questions if you have any. Nobody's ever silent on this team.
Hey, Paula has a question.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying, Paula. Hey, go ahead, Paula. Can't you hear me? No, she can't because I'm muted myself.
Hey, Matt, that was a great presentation. Thank you. Very informative. Can you address, at least for the public, your feelings about future events on No Name Creek in regards to the burn scar?
So,
do you feel like we're past it, or do you feel like this could happen again, folks? Just because sometimes I think people
if the,
Seriously.
you know,
Sorry.
we've been saying this kind of the whole time, you know, only about what, 8% of no name burned above us. But we've said the whole time, it's literally the worst 8% we could have possibly had burned. It's the steepest, it's the least vegetated. There's rockfall issues. There's basically, it's a 60% slope in a lot of places straight down to the creek. So we were suspicious, and we've been warned that, you know, debris flow events could occur. Everybody kind of looked at the worst case scenario, to be honest with you, is these 50,000 cubic yard debris flow events that are going to come down and take out the intake. So I think we were focused on that a little bit. But what we're seeing is that's not what's going to get us. It's these 500, 800 yard events that basically go down, block the creek for a duration of time, kind of blow out in a big muddy mess, cause more debris flows down, cause more that water to collect more of the debris from the debris flows downstream. And we basically just get this muddy water that comes by the intake. It's not doing any damage to the intake. It just looks terrible. And we have to be able to react to that muddy mess coming down, shut the intake off, let it go by, and then be able to turn the intake back on. And that duration of time as we let it go by could be a couple hours. It could be 6 hours. We don't know what it's going to be because it kind of gets stuck behind logs. It gets stuck behind rocks. It gets stuck in pools, and it just kind of continuously comes down in a high NTU. And on Saturday/Sunday, it was kind of a worst case scenario for anybody because the Roaring Fork was also running at an extremely high level of muddiness. If you had walked outside and looked at the Colorado and the Roaring Fork, it was hard to tell which one was muddier, but they were both pretty much chocolate milk the whole entire day. So, you know, we did what we had to do. We flushed the system and we made it into there. But I guess the answer to your question, I'm kind of going out of track a little bit, is this is probably going to happen for a while. You know, I don't know how those upper slopes are going to revegetate. We had a drone up there recently that was flying the hillside, seeing the scars coming down because it creates a giant channel. Obviously, it comes down. And this seems like there's a lot of material left up there. So the more it rains, the more the material comes down. If it's 1 slide, 2 slide, 4 slides, it just depends on how many slides, how much water is coming down, how long we're going to have to deal with it. So it could be years and years and years.
Thank you. And I understand that the people that were kind of caught near the slides or the debris flows were very aware and really working hard to avoid getting hurt and stuff. So I just want to applaud the public for, you know, how they took this up and really applaud the city staff. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Shelley.
Thank you, Matt and Leanne and Warren, all for bringing this to us and for all your work to keep the water flowing. So I just want to say I'm so happy, and I know, Matt, you mentioned this, but I'm so happy we did get the improvements in place that we got done. And hopefully those will keep water flowing to the city. Are there other things we need to do? You know, if we were to get a multi-day, even a week-long event of continual rains that we're bringing down water, are we, you know, can we protect against that? Or are there other things that we should be looking at?
So if we get a multi-day event, it depends on where it's going to rain at. Obviously, we kind of talked about a little bit, you know, if it's raining up No Name, Grizzly, Flat Tops, that kind of thing, where it does rain quite a bit, then we'll just shut the intake off and we'll go to the Roaring Fork. You know, if it's raining across the whole entire basin area,
That's
you know,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
You know, then we don't have a water choice, basically. You know, we're going to have to deal with really high NTU water out of the Roaring Fork, which hopefully is less than, we'll call it 800. We don't even want to talk about that, but we'll have to make some tough decisions at that point. We only have about, you know, 5.5 million gallons of water, we'll call it, that's really usable within the city before we basically drain everything. In the summertime, in the month of June, we've exceeded
Right.
normal water usage. You know, we're using somewhere around 4.2. Warren can correct me if I'm off on that one, but around 4.2 million gallons a day. 4.2, we only have 5.5. You know, we can go about a day with everybody using things. So when we make that phone call to say, hey, there are watering restrictions on right now, this is basically an emergency situation. We need people to understand that and stop using water so that we have enough time to let whatever it is go by, because it will. And we still have enough water for domestic use within the city for showers and whatever else people need to do inside. Just kind of cut out the irrigation and cut out the superfluous things that you don't really need to be doing with water, and let us get through those events. But we need the public to basically take that very seriously when we make those calls.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And I hope to never make that call again, but I don't know.
Well, if you need to, you need to. So we got to let people know. So I think that's okay. And I think what you guys did that morning was, you needed to get the word out. So there will always be some people that aren't happy with it, but it's a tough situation and tough call. And like you said, we need to get people to take it seriously and conserve. So appreciate that. Thanks for all your work.
Anybody else? All right. I think it goes without saying we all jointly appreciate the work you, Jake, Warren, Leanne, everybody else, and everybody else I'm missing here. So, but thank you, Matt, and hopefully we won't have too many more of these updates this summer.
And since I'm going to do one more minute. I'm sorry. Since we're doing shout outs, I want to thank Parks, Streets. Everybody went out and shut off water systems because Parks has some manual systems still. We pulled everybody in to shut everything we could possibly off. So it was a citywide effort. So I want to make sure everybody's acknowledged for that.
Thanks, Matt. And I think when it comes around to budget time, I for one would be pretty receptive if Parks wanted to put in a budget item for automating their sprinklers so that we could do that. I think that is a new world we're living in, and we should not be wasting hundreds of staff hour times with that. Good thing Deborah agrees. I like it. All right. Anything else? Thanks, guys. Next item, landfill and recycle center hours of operation, updates and employee requests. Mr. Langhorst.
I apologize. I think you get to listen to me for more time, and the next one too, I think. Can we drag Liz over?
There we go. She should be joining us shortly.
Liz is in City
Hello.
Hall today. Hi, Liz.
Yes, I'm just downstairs from you.
You are. So landfill. We've been talking about this for a little while. I'd actually kind of brought it up with King a little bit, but Liz has really taken the bull by the horns and kind of made this conversation move forward. Landfill hours of operation, recycle center hours of operation. And Liz, you just cut me off, or get in here whenever you want to. Landfill right now operates basically 6 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Monday, I'm rounding. Tuesdays, 8:15 or 8:30 to 4 o'clock, all the way through, blah, blah, blah. We would like to modify that. Currently, we are seeing a significant amount of, and we have for years, we have seen a significant amount of overtime hours in the basically 59 hours, I think, per week amount. And that's between the recycle center and the landfill. And we think it's kind of time to adjust A, the schedule, and B, to hire that other FTE that King was always kind of resistant to out at the landfill. Obviously, 59 hours of overtime, 40-hour person, significantly less cost than 59 hours of overtime. So I guess the general principle of this, since I'm a little behind schedule, is that we would like to adjust the landfill hours of operations from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to be from 8 to 4:15. That actually gives us 45 additional minutes a day that we would be open consistently. It does shorten Monday a little bit, but we don't see the haulers coming in at 6:30 in the morning anymore to be the first load out because they were hauling on Sunday. So there's really no reason to open up that early. And we would like to adjust Saturday from 8 to 2 to not, or from 9 to 4 to 9 to 1. So we'd be losing a couple hours on Saturday, which is mainly residential loads coming in. We would just tighten people up a little bit. We get big lags. We get the morning crew, the afternoon crew, and the, oh my God, the gate's closing crew. But kind of get people to adjust a little bit more. I know, Jonathan, that's you. It's me too. To a little bit shorter schedule associated with it. What this also does is it puts everybody on a 10-hour workday. So people would be working 4 10s instead of 1 11, 1 9, 1 9.5, 1 9. You know, we'd be putting them on a 10-hour work schedule. We'd hire a new FTE out there, which would basically be an equipment operator, and we would spread that load across the group a little bit more than overworking everybody as we currently are. Benefits of this things, I mean, it's morale, it's less overtime associated with it, more consistent hours of operations out there. There's all kinds of benefits associated with this. So we wanted to bring it to you and have a discussion about it to see if you would be opposed or good with the conversation. And then also Recycle would be doing the exact same thing. We basically have one recycle tech. We've hired her as a full-time employee. That's a 40-hour-a-week job. We'd like to at least kind of keep it close to 40 hours a week because right now she's working 60 because she also works one day at the scale at the landfill. So she's been working Monday through Saturday for months and months and months at this point. And Tuesdays are kind of a slower day for the recycle center anyhow. We'd like to move the recycle center to a 8 to 5 schedule. So basically, Lori would get there at 7:30 and she'd leave at 5:30. It's also a 10-hour day, but it'd be 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week. But we'd be expanding the hours of operation from 9 to 4 to 8 to 5. So there's more hours for people to get there. And like I said, Tuesdays is historically kind of a slower day anyhow. So not to prolong the conversation, Liz, you got anything else you want to add?
I would just to reiterate and add a little bit to what you said there, Matt. Thank you. That was a very good explanation. Basically, the two main points of looking at this are, first of all, for the employees, I think moving to a more steady 4-10 schedule with a reasonable amount of overtime, but not an overwhelming amount, would help us avoid burnout, help us improve work-life balance. The other part of this is also improving our financial stability and financial sustainability for the landfill. So I've just done some quick calculations in looking at this schedule. And basically, in order to be financially sustainable, we need to be averaging tickets of about $1,200 an hour at the landfill. And so there's some weird little pockets of time that we're going to cut out with this new schedule. So for example, that 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. on Monday that Matt mentioned, we usually only bring in about $300 an hour during that time. So it's really dragging our average down, yet it still costs us $1,200 an hour to run the landfill during those hours. So it's just kind of about making it more efficient in that way and just making sure we're being financially responsible. Some of the haulers have mentioned to me that they would really, really appreciate that extra 8 a.m. start consistently throughout the week instead of having to wait till 8:30. The other big benefit I do see is I think having the recycle center open fewer days, but longer hours on those days would, I think, really increase the opportunities for some people who work during the day to recycle. So that's really all I have before you guys discuss or ask questions.
Well, I wanted to bring up one more point that we've noticed over the COVID period of our lives is that without the additional FTE right now, those overtime hours kind of skyrocket. So if we're missing one person, we're already working overtime, then there's another person that has to fill that duration of time for them. So if somebody wants to take a vacation, if somebody calls in sick, then we're either short-staffed or somebody else has to be brought in because we do not have what you could call an extra person or a floater or somebody to take up those overtime hours and help balance it out a little bit more. We just work them more and more and more instead of trying to balance out their lives a little bit, whereas that work-life balance is really important to us. So
And I would just add, Matt, also, I know we've almost forgotten about it because it's been open so long, but we do have a part-time recycle tech position open currently that has been open since before I started working here. And at this point, we do not think we're going to be able to fill it. So sort of the other goal of adding this operator position is it would free up other employees to cover the recycle center. So we would not need to fill that part-time position, and that could be, you know, filed away and not filled.
Yes. Comments, discussion?
I would love to open this up for public comment, see if anybody from the public would like to comment on these new hours. So if we have questions at this point, I see 3 hands up. Were those comments, questions, or? There were questions. Okay. Paula, then Steve, then Charlie.
That was great. I totally understand where you guys are coming from. Thank you, Liz and Matt. My one question was, it seems like the Saturday traffic is going to be pretty much consumer oriented, and I'm just kind of doing this off of my own way I work, that, you know, you trying to get things together in the morning and then get it hauled out, and kind of like Matt said, sometimes it's the end of the day. But had you considered a 10 to 2 instead of a 9 to 1? And was there a reason that you went with 9 to 1?
I can answer that if you want, Matt. We did consider that. And if the council has a strong preference towards 10 to 2, I believe we could make that work. I suggested 10 to 2 or 9 to 1 to the operators, and the operators' overwhelming preference was 9 to 1. I think with the idea being then they get more of their Saturday to do something, but we definitely could consider 10 to 2 as well.
Great, thank you. I just think it's, once again, kind of consumer oriented, where most of us go to the landfill on the weekend, so.
Thanks, Paul. Steve, and then Charlie.
Let's see. Have you gone to public comment?
Nope, these are questions right now.
No. I'll pass.
Charlie.
I don't have a question, I have a comment, so when we're ready to comment.
Probably get there pretty darn quick. Oh, Shelley, do you have a question?
I do have a question. And I was just wondering, you know, it's interested in, Liz, what you said about the part-time recycle tech. And I guess I have a question for both of you. Is it normal to have your set employee schedule? Because you guys have regular open times and you know what size crew you need on. But to actually have that much built-in overtime into it, because I don't see that as sustainable. So I'm just wondering, is that like normal operation, or?
I personally would say that is not normal. So that's why we want to change it.
Are we talking about the 59 hours we're currently running at, or the few hours that we're recommending we go to?
Oh, both. Yeah.
The 59 hours has been a point of, I would almost get a little bit of contention between King and I while we were doing this. He never wanted to make that leap into another FTE. And it just kind of, as the discussion has rolled into Liz as she has moved into his position. And she's been obviously much more open to the conversation. She's had extensive conversations with the crew up there on multiple different options on how we could do this. And this is kind of where it panned out, where it works okay for the crew, it works okay 4 hours of operation, and where we would like to move it to. Now, the crew does like some overtime.
Okay.
You know, they always like a little bit extra in their paycheck. They're willing to work a little extra here and there. They were actually, and Liz can back me up on this or clarify on this, they actually were a little upset we were pulling all the overtime because we did have an option where they weren't working any overtime. They didn't want that. They want a little bit of overtime, and that's perfectly fine and is sustainable within the model. We've been doing the massive amounts of overtime for a while now, so I believe, unless Liz is going to correct me on it, I don't think she is, that this is sustainable. Yes.
Okay, but getting it down, you feel like it would be if you get it down to the level that you're proposing. Okay, the other part is, have we built up enough fund now? I think I remember from the 2021 budget that it looked like if you took out the capital projects, we were kind of operating in the black now. Is there enough operating income now to cover another full-time FTE?
So since Liz hasn't gone through a budget process as of yet, the answer would be yes. So what we do is we basically take and look at how much it costs for O&M and say, okay, that's our base at this point. If that base needs to shift a little bit, that's fine. We just then take what is left over and put it into capital and see what we can do for capital projects for the next year. Okay. So we could do no capital projects and hire 20 more people. We don't want to do that. We just want to hire one.
Build up reserves.
Exactly. Well, we need to get the landfill where we want it to be before we start really hitting the reserves. We have a lot of projects that we've kind of got built up, a few pieces of equipment, those kinds of fun things. And Liz she came in with a load of ideas, which I think you'll all be happy with. And we'll start bringing those to you as we kind of get them pieced out a little bit more. But
we'll
yeah,
get to that in budget.
Balancing capital versus O&M.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Anybody from the public like to comment on the proposal of new hours? All right. We'll bring it back for a motion and or further comment. Councilor Davis.
I'd make a motion to accept staff's recommendation or recommending the approval of the proposed landfill and recycle center hours of operation changes and the addition of the new FTE to the landfill in the 2021 for reasons noted within the staff report.
I will second Steve's motion.
Motion by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Wusso. Further conversation on the motion. Councilor Willen.
Yeah, I guess, and I really criticize the work that goes into staff coming up with recommendations. But my concern goes to the Saturday thing that's been mentioned already. I think Paul kind of hit on it. A lot of people are up early, they got their cars loaded, they'll go up and get in before the line at the scales gets big. So that's that morning rush, I think. And then the rest of us, we work during the day because that's the only day we can work. And we gather up our stuff, we go up toward the end of the day, not because it's closing, but because it's taking us that long to put the stuff together. And what I'm concerned about is we seem to be making more of a what am I looking for? Concession to the commercial haulers by working in their hours rather than working about when do the public can the public get there mostly, which is on Saturday. The other thought I had, and just my thoughts as I looked at this, is when they had the recycle center downtown before it was moved up to the landfill, when the school expanded and all that, we were only open a couple days a week. And I'm wondering, do we really need to have the recycle? I'm a great recycler. My kids call me a recycle Nazi. So it's not that I don't believe in it, but do we need it open 4 days a week? And could we take that back to 3 days and maybe increase the hours on Saturday? And I know that's easy for me to say, and you guys got to figure out staffing and that. So I'm not trying to be critical. I'm really concerned that we're shortchanging the public who use the landfill mostly on Saturday.
Thanks, Sean. Any other comments? Paul.
I still feel that way, just kind of reflecting what Charlie said. I'm just wondering, Steve, if we can adjust that motion for that Saturday hours to at least be 10 to 2 to give people time to get there. Yeah, it just takes time to, you wake up in the morning, you're moving brush around, you're trying to find a pickup truck, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just giving our community a little bit of leeway there. Even if you can't adjust the hours, at least give them a little bit later start.
I'm not exactly sure how this works, but if the council wanted to direct us to say Saturdays were 10 to 2, the landfill would be amenable to that. I'm not sure.
I was waiting to see what Steve was going to say.
Yeah, Councilor Davis needs to amend his motion to either accept that or not.
Well, I just have every confidence that staff has looked at this about 100 different ways. And I don't want to take their recommendation and then say, okay, you guys, I know you studied this for months, but I'm smarter than the outcome of your study. So I'm not going to modify my motion at all. Unless staff comes back and says, it really doesn't matter to us, we can go either way. Personally, I'd love to have it 10 to 2, but I don't want to get in the way of that recommendation. So,
Well, just to kind of counter that a little, Steve, and just to encourage you, I think Liz said that she looked at both those options as starting at 9 or starting at 2. I'm sorry, starting at 10. So it felt like that was a little bit on the table from Liz's perspective. So I'm just throwing that out there and encouraging that just slightly later, just to give us a little bit more time.
yeah, I also heard from her that her polling was overwhelmingly slanted towards the 9 o'clock to 1. Is that correct, Liz?
That is correct from the operator's point of view.
I think it always kind of comes down to, if we tell people it closes at 4, they show up at 3:45. If we tell them they closes at 1, they'll show up at 12:45. We got to have a little bit of faith in our public to understand what the hours are, and that, hey, you have to be in your truck by 12:30 to get there at 12:45. We always let people sneak in a little bit here and there towards the end, and have some faith in them that they'll understand what the hours of operation are, and they'll try to work within them. I gather the piles during the week. I throw them in my truck early on Saturday and I go up, kind of thing. And then sometimes I will try to make a second trip. I just won't make that second trip, or I'll do it a little bit sooner myself, kind of thing. So, we're trying to favor I don't know if there's any real way to say that 10 to 2 is going to be more profitable. That's not really what we're looking at. We were looking at 4 hours of operation. It's what Pitkin does. Summit and Eagle County are all 9 to 1. Garfield County stays open a little bit later than we would do. We're kind of going in line with what the other larger landfills in the area are actually doing right now. So that's part of the reason that we've also picked that too, is to get some consistency throughout the region. If it was an overwhelmingly 10 to 2 kind of conversation out there, maybe we could make that adjustment and just tell the operators that's what they're going to do, but we'd prefer 9 to 1.
Shelley.
So based on that, I'd like to keep my motion the same, and let's vote on it. And if it's voted down, then we'll direct you in a different direction, I suppose.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And I support that also, just based on, I see too, as looking at the Garfield County landfill, they're up until 4. So I think people have an option. If they don't get up to our landfill on time, they can rent it out to Garfield County if it's critical that it goes out. But speaking to the person who does the landfill runs at our household anyway, you get up early in the morning on your Saturday if you want to get it done and get it out the door and get it up there. So I'll support this motion and follow staff's recommendations on this.
Ingrid.
I want to just mention that ultimately I do trust staff because they have had significantly more time to review this. And if we get feedback generally that this is not working, then we can adjust. But for the time being, I'd like to call for the vote.
All right. Okay. I guess I won't get a comment then. Gosh darn it. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed. Motion passes 5-2.
I guess Charlie and Shelley are going to have to get up earlier, Jonathan. I mean, Charlie and Paula, excuse me.
It was up to me. The landfill will be open from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday. So.
It's the borrowing the truck, Tony. That's the part that just takes some time.
All right. I'll help you find one on Friday night.
Count on that.
Paula, you can borrow my truck anytime.
Oh my gosh, this is great.
Us too.
Wait, I need to borrow a truck.
Before we leave this one real quick, can I say two little things?
Sure.
One, if we do get overwhelming complaints about it, we'll have a different conversation. We'll bring it back to you. And two, Liz did a great thing with the compost the other day that I'd like to bring up. I believe she was 100% successful in getting it STA certified. So that means we can now sell it to the federal government, the state of Colorado. They can use it on all their reclamation projects. So she was successful in getting the compost STA certified. So that's a big win in my book. So good job, Liz.
I want to reiterate, my vote wasn't against the staff recommendation as so much as my concern about the service to the public. And I appreciate all the hard work you guys did come up with this, and I hope it works.
We appreciate the support on it.
Thanks, guys. Asphalt.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Liz.
All right. You know, we should just bring Jake over just for the fun of it. Let's see if he's in his pajamas. He doesn't have to turn his video on.
Oh yeah, he does. Now he does.
Now he does. Okay, asphalt. So there he is. It looks like he just woke up. It's perfect. Obviously, you know, we've been working on the Blake Avenue from McDonald's entrance all the way to the Walmart entrance. You know, we've gotten water line done. Excellent. It was really old thin wall steel water line out there. We got the concrete entrances done. We coordinated with CDOT to get the loops back in. I believe Blake is open, and tomorrow all the entrances will be open. Everything will be concreted. So we're moving along with that project really well. Our next phases are some new inlets, the new storm inlets out there, because the two existing ones didn't go anywhere. They were rusted out very nicely and percolating, but that's all they were doing. So we'll be putting some new storm inlets in, connecting over to an inlet system that goes to a water quality pond and actually functions. So we're cleaning up that whole entire area. Part of that construction, I'm going to throw a exhibit up here real quick. I'm sorry. If I can get it to work. Can everybody see this exhibit?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so part of that construction is, we'll go back up here. We're concreting this whole entire intersection in front of Walmart. That intersection's been a plague on us all, as far as I can remember, for almost 21 years now. It's been falling apart. What we found out was there was all the pipes underneath of it basically were not going anywhere. So it was feeding water to the substructure under the road. But to make sure that we are good, we're concreting the whole intersection and actually concreting this bus pad right here. There were giant ruts where the buses stopped to pick people up. This bus pad over here will also have a concrete pad in front of it so the buses don't destroy that. And then these two entrances down here are completely concrete now because the buses would stop on them and push the asphalt down the hill. So a lot of this is heavy truck traffic issues associated with the asphalt out here because it is a continuous bus loop, plus all the semis coming into the facility itself. But the last little piece of this puzzle is asphalt out here. And I think we wanted to bring this to you because we have so many Blake Avenue asphalt conversations right now. I just wanted to clarify which portion this was. But what we're going to be doing is once we get all the concrete in, the storm sewer in, we're backfilling trenches with asphalt ourselves. We'll come in and mill out all the asphalts in this red area right here and do a new overlay and restripe everything out there. So that basically from the Walmart intersection all the way back to the entrance to McDonald's and into the old American Family warehouse entrance over here, all of this will be new concrete, new asphalt, new water lines. We're upgrading the electric lines out there while we're there too. Gas didn't want to participate. They're good. But we checked with everybody to make sure that once we did this, we didn't have to come back to it for a long, long time. So the other portion that we will be doing in, sorry, wrong one. Did a new exhibit pop up?
Yes.
Perfect. And the other portion of the asphalt we will be doing is the last year we poured a concrete pad here because we had the same problem with the steep slopes on 29th Street with the buses. And then we poured a concrete pad up here and fixed this handicap ramp also. So between those two, the asphalt's all alligatored up, but it is millable. We'll be milling that out and creating a new pathway into the back Walmart entrance over here. So this is the asphalt project that we are currently doing out at the Walmart area. But I wanted to make sure we were all clear. This is the asphalt project we're doing. We are looking at still asphalt projects along Blake Avenue from 23rd Street over to 26th Street. But I had to wait till my Red Mountain project came into bid, which it did yesterday. Gould was the apparent low bidder on that project. We're going to be meeting with them early next week, see where we can get some cost savings out of the project, to see if we have enough money left over within the street tax to complete the full removal and replacement of Blake between 23rd and 26th Street like we've been talking about. So just trying to be cautious with projects over the summer, get the big projects we had planned, and try to get the last Blake Avenue project done also, if all possible. But we'll be bringing that one back to you for discussions, I believe also. Deborah, you want to chime in?
On like when we're gonna bring it back, or?
Well, part of the conversation a little bit about Blake Avenue between 23rd and 26th Street was we kind of wanted to get it done before we open the gate. And before, Bell Rippey kind of got really fully going on it. So I don't know if trying to dance around this question, if that means I have to do it in 2021 or if I can do it in early 2022, because they will not be very far along with building construction until early mid next year. So trying to play the budget game a little bit.
So I guess what I am supposed to be asking, Matt, sorry, I didn't quite know what you wanted, is it okay to consider that project in 2022 since, the apartments they will not be done and therefore there will not be a gate opened. I think we're trying to, stretch our budget and do the responsible thing.
I'll just speak up. Yes. I mean, if we don't have the budget in 2021 and it makes more sense to have all that construction traffic, in my opinion, for Bell Rippey on old asphalt versus brand new asphalt, then yeah, let's push it towards 2022. Because there's a lot of utilities. There's some utilities associated with that as well, correct, Matt?
Yes.
So we wouldn't, even if we could, we had the money to do it tomorrow, we wouldn't, that wouldn't make any sense to put it down just to have the new utilities at some point next year with the development tear it up. Am I looking at that wrong?
No, you aren't. And we have some utility work between 24th and call it 25th Street that we would like to do for electric, but electric's tied up for a lot of this year with Midland Avenue, Cardiff, and all the projects that we're doing also. And we don't want to mill anything up and put new asphalt down and probably speed humps until we have all the utilities kind of worked out in that area also. So it's been a busy summer. I don't know if you've noticed around town or not, but on top of mudslides, it's been a very, very busy summer. And we're going to cap it off with part of a subdivision project over on Red Mountain also, in finishing up Jake's project on Blake Avenue and then getting back to some in-depth maintenance on storm sewers and everything else to cap the season off. So it would be good if we could push it to 2022. We can bid it in the wintertime, see how prices go on asphalt, try to get on somebody's schedule a little bit earlier. And maybe we could even coordinate it with some of the Bell Rippey stuff that's going on because they have to do asphalt also. Maybe we could get some cost savings out of it. So that was kind of the thought process. But I want to make sure that everybody understood one project versus the other and what's going on.
Any more questions for Matt on this project? All right. We have an award, so probably need a motion. Charlie.
I would move to approve the award asphalt bid RFP 2021-16P United Companies in the amount of $67,541.45.
Second.
And I'd like, if I can, just to make a quick comment. Jake, you did a great job out there, and I want to compliment you for the good work out there. I've been out there many times, and the disruption has been minimal, and I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you very much.
All right, been moved by Charlie, seconded by myself. Any comments on the motion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? I believe motion carries unanimously.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That was the marathon session we had you for tonight. Thank you as well, Jake. Next item, ordinance 07 series 2021, changes to title 07045-120 affordable workforce housing. Hannah, you're coming on over.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. The item before you, actually the next two items will be me. The first one is an ordinance to make some changes to Title 070-045-120, which is our affordable and workforce housing session. So previously in discussions with council as we were passing our inclusionary housing amendment to code, there were some discussions on a few changes from staff as well as city council. So the next two items relate to those discussions. I've outlined the three changes that we're bringing before you, and I'll mention them here. The first one being amending the geographic employment requirements for our voluntary program so that it matches our inclusionary zoning standard, which is a 3-tiered geographic employment area. The second is amending primary occupant qualifications, again, for the voluntary program to clarify some disability benefits criteria. This is actually something that came across staff's desk in the implementation of the voluntary program that we think needs just a little bit of clarification to meet the intent. And the third one is amending the inclusionary zoning standards to add an exemption for nationally registered historic buildings. And so in looking at these changes, the ordinance that's before you, staff did believe that the occupancy qualifications for the voluntary deed restriction program should be moved into the housing guidelines document that also outlines all the standards for inclusionary zoning. So moving that language into the housing guidelines document does require a code amendment, which is why we've brought this ordinance before you. So the change that's being proposed in Ordinance 7, I've included the current code section that has the occupancy requirement for our voluntary program. And that would just be changed to note that the qualifications can be found in the housing guidelines. And one of the main reasons for doing this, as I've outlined in the staff report, is these guidelines do have a tendency to need tweaking and amending from time to time. So if they live in the housing guidelines document, that is amended by a resolution from City Council, as opposed to a code text amendment, which takes a little bit longer to 2 readings before you guys. So it also matches up with our inclusionary zoning standards and all the qualifications that already live in this document. So an obvious home for this new section. So the first item is Ordinance 7, series of 2021. Staff is recommending approval. And I will take questions on this particular item and then further explain some of the changes in the following resolution. Thank you.
Questions? Go ahead, Charlie.
More of a procedural question, Hannah, anything else? Do we need to make findings to approve these changes?
That is an interesting question. Carl, I see you just unmuted yourself.
No, I think you're fine. Just making these changes. I mean, it really is an extension of what we've been working on previously. So I think you're fine.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Do we need a motion?
Do you need public comment?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Shelley. Anybody from the public like to comment? Well, we need public comment. We're just not going to get it. See, now we'll bring it back to council. Shelley, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to move that we approve ordinance number 7 of series 2021, amending a portion of 070-045 120 related to affordable and workforce housing.
Second.
Been moved by Shelley, seconded by Tony. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye.
We have a vote, it's an ordinance.
Sorry, Charlie?
I think an ordinance requires a roll call vote.
Oh.
Carl,
okay.
is that right?
I don't actually know. Do
It doesn't necessarily. Did everybody vote yes?
Yes.
Okay, that's a roll call.
Motion passes unanimously. And usually, just for everybody watching, I try to, if I sense that there's some dissent, I usually try to do a roll call. And the 2 times tonight where I didn't realize that I would have. So thanks, Charlie, for keeping me on my toes. This is resolution 2021-14 community housing guidelines, item number 13.
Thank you again, Mayor. So now that we've moved our guidelines into the housing guide, or moved our primary occupant qualifications into the housing guidelines, we can discuss the changes now to that document, which is amended by City Council by resolution. So as I mentioned, and City Council had previously discussed, this is adding some language to our housing guidelines that amends the voluntary program to match our geographic employment requirements of the inclusionary zoning. And as a refresher, our inclusionary zoning standards have a 3-tiered approach. The first priority being municipal boundary of City of Glenwood Springs. And if not enough qualified applicants are received in that, then it then goes to the 81601 zip code. And if not enough applicants are received in that category, then it can move to 30-mile out boundary from City of Glenwood Springs. So that is one of the changes that we've added into the housing guidelines document. Also, so that included a new section in that document as outlined in the staff report. One of the exemptions, as I mentioned, is the buildings that are on the National Historic Register. And in discussing this with Gretchen Ricehill, Assistant Community Development Director, as well as staff liaison to Historic Preservation Commission, this was a pretty obvious amendment to add to the exceptions list. So any building that's on the National Register would not be subject to our inclusionary zoning standards. So if we had a nationally registered building that came in and was adding 10 or more units, they would not be required to put in any affordable units per our inclusionary zoning standards. So that's a new exemption. And then the final change is more to the primary occupancy for our voluntary program. It's a small clarification. We've had an occupancy qualification category of receiving Social Security disability benefits. And we have received an application where someone was receiving veterans disability benefits, which was not specifically called out on that line item. And staff does believe that meets the original intent of the disability benefit item. And so we have added veteran disability benefit to that qualification standard. So those are the 3 changes that are being added to the housing guideline document, which is amended by resolution. Staff is recommending approval of resolution 2021-14. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Questions? Shelley.
Just a quick question, Hannah, on the historic, buildings on the historic register. Is that kind of a requirement of those buildings that they not be included in inclusionary? Is that like a statewide thing or anything? Or is it just the difficulty of trying to upgrade those buildings?
Excellent question. It's not included in their requirements, but as you may be aware, registered buildings do have quite a few hoops to jump through when they do remodels. Any new development, they're held to quite a few standards. And so this would be one that would likely hinder any redevelopment in these buildings. And so staff felt it important to include. Also, we don't have very many of these buildings in Glenwood Springs, and so applicability is very low in making this change.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll open it to public comment. Anybody from the public like to comment? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back for a motion. Go ahead, Shelley.
I will move that we adopt resolution 2021-14, adoption of the housing guidelines for inclusionary zoning.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Shelley, seconded by Paula. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, seeing none, motion passes unanimously. All right, thanks, Hannah.
You have a great night.
You as well. All right, I have in here scheduled, the next item is a break. How are folks feeling?
I move to support a break or second it.
All right, let's come back here 8:05. All right, is everybody back? Are we ready to adjourn out of recess?
Yes.
Okay. I think we're not on yet. What's his name again, Tony? Her name?
Macy.
Macy.
Macy. Say hello.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Roll right into number 15, raised grant.
Okay, I would pull Terry over for the description of the project.
Should be joining us shortly.
Good evening, Council.
Hello, Terry.
Hi. I'd like to request that the council support matching funds for a RAISE grant that we've been applying for. RAISE is the next version of the Tiger and Build grants that we have applied for in the past, large federal grants. We're requesting that the council approve $1,404,736.88 in matching funds towards a grant that would support both the 6th Street reconstruction and the 8th Street widening. The total construction estimate for both of these projects is $5,393,105.78. The city's matching grant funds would be 26% of the project total. We have been invited by CDOT to participate in this regional RAISE grant. The other participants are the cities of Grand Junction and Rifle. The CDOT director, Shoshana Liu, director of transportation for CDOT, is trying to create a collaboration with Western Slope communities like ours to compete for this grant on a on a national level. And so we are participating in this and hoping to be able to bring these funds to Glenwood Springs. I think Deborah would like to talk about the funding.
I know this is kind of hard math to follow. We put aside $1.7 million for 6th Street a couple of years ago. We've applied for $1.2 million from CDOT for 6th Street. So like the best possible outcome for us is if we get the CDOT grants that would take the place of 1.2 million of this 1.4, and then we would be putting in about $250,000, say $300,000 for both projects. Now, I am much more confident about the grant for 6th Street than I am for the RAISE grant. These are highly competitive. About 5% of communities that apply for them get them. I have never done a joint one with a state before. It was shocking and very wonderful that CDOT offered to do this. Best case scenario, we get 6th and 8th Street for, let's say, about $300,000. Don't hold me to that because who knows what'll happen when we bid it. Worst case scenario, it's about $1.4 million for both. of money you already put aside for just one. I can assure you this kind of opportunity with a state partnering with you will not come around very often. Okay, Terry.
You said it all.
I guess, do you guys want the project described? I know you kind of looked at it, but we're happy to.
Yeah, I have, I can bring up a screen if you'd like to see, what our planning efforts have been so far for 8th Street and 6th Street.
Would anybody like to see that? No? Okay.
Has it changed from the one that we saw a couple of years ago, or?
No, it's really the 6th Street master plan. That RFP went out recently. In fact, I think it was at our last council meeting where we chose the consultant to do that design for us, but it's the 6th Street master plan design.
Charlie, question.
Thanks, Deborah. I usually pretty good with math, and I'm having trouble following this one. And you said it was difficult, so I'm glad you said that because I thought it was just me. The two projects together, 8th Street and 6th Street, are 5.4 million roughly, right? To do the construction. And we're anticipating that 6th Street is going to be in that 1.75 range. I think that's why we set aside that amount of money. Or are you saying you think that's less now?
I believe when we updated the estimate, it landed around 1.5, which is why we could only ask for 1.2 from the state.
From the CDOT grant.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If we don't get CDOT and we get this grant, what would happen? What's it
Then
reverse
if we want to move forward, then you're looking at spending the reserve for both of them, right? You still, for that amount of money, you still get, if you get the raise grant, you still get 6th Street done and you still get 8th Street done within that 1.75 set aside.
Okay, that's a combination of the 1.4.
That's the most unlikely scenario.
No, I understand that. And if we don't get this, then we'll hopefully get the CDOT grant. We'll have money left over that we can use for some other project.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I think I understand it now. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. This is just us authorizing. I guess I'll open it for public comment briefly. Anybody from the public comment? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion. Charlie.
I would move that we authorize staff to apply for the raise grant and commit a matching fund of 1.4 and change. It's set out in the staff memo for matching funds for the raise grant.
I'll second that.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Paula. Further comments on the motion? Shelley.
Well, I just had a question and I had taken my hand down because I thought I understood the numbers, but then after Deborah explained it to Charlie, now I'm more confused. So excuse me if I'm being a little dense on this, but I think the memo said that both projects were a cost of $5,393,106. So that's a 6th Street plus that 8th Street widening, right?
Yes.
So if we only have 1.75 put away, how can we do both projects for that if we don't get the grants? That's
if you don't get the CDOT grant, but you get the raise grant, then how we are packaging up, because it's a regional grant, is we are using the money for 6th Street as the match for 8th Street.
Okay, yeah.
And it just works really well if we happen to also get this CDOT grant for 6th Street. And CDOT knows that. That was part of what, the executive director was talking about when she was thinking about this idea. Is like, wouldn't it be great if we could leverage the money we're going to give communities with federal dollars? Hey, why don't we look at your 6th Street and 8th Street? Because we were walking around town.
Okay, that clears it up. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, Ryan, let's take roll. Putting him on the spot now.
Ryan fell asleep.
Start. Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Yes.
Councillor Kaut,
Yes.
Mayor Godis,
Yes.
Councillor Hershey,
No and yes. No, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to vote no.
Councillor Wusso,
Yes.
Councillor Davis,
Yes.
Councillor Stepp.
Yes.
That's 7-1. Oh wait, 6-1.
7-1?
All right.
Brian, you can't vote.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Terry. Item number 16, Silver Stage revised proposal.
And I'm thinking that is Brian.
He'll be over shortly.
Hello, Council. So we had brought to you a agreement proposal by Glenwood Land Company about a month or so ago. And we had worked with them on this proposed Silver Sage easement. Let me share my screen here so you can kind of see where we're talking about. It's been a little while. Okay, so this 50-acre conservation easement has been passed through the Parks and Recreation Commission. We're looking at developing some trails and removing some of the social trails in the area. One of the things that changed in the original proposal was the access down to airport property. The Parks and Recreation Commission reviewed the proposal. Andy Muir from the commission met with us, with the developers, and I think we're just about there. We're going to have a few little tweaks with the agreement, but the motion by the commission was in support of pursuing the acquisition to the property and the conservation easement on the condition that we could get a access or a trail easement access to Airport Road to just increase the value and use and accessibility of the open space and the trails that would exist up there. And so we would recommend to council from review of this that to allow the city manager and the city attorney to sign off and approve the agreement on the condition that we're able to get that trail access.
And let me just jump in that on the us, that would be that the proponent of the conservation easement that is offering it up would get the connection to Airport Road prior to execution of the agreement. The Parks and Rec Commission felt that that was critical. So really the motion would be to authorize execution of the conservation easement on the condition of an easement being obtained for access to Airport Road for trail purposes and final review by the city manager and city attorney.
Shelley, question?
Is the proposed access shown in the pink, the arrows?
The proposed, right. So these would be the improved trail connections that would exist. The original proposal had the trail coming down here, connecting to Airport Road, effectively creating this really nice loop.
Okay.
And they weren't quite able to get that yet. They're still working on it. So I think the value to the city still exists, and the Park and Recreation Commission, which I think had originally looked at, is this really worth it for the city without that access? Felt like there was enough of an opportunity there to go ahead and keep working with Mike Maple and the Glenwood Land Company to try and get that trail access connection and still go forward with the deal.
Okay, so it's not it's not a new easement up on the north end where that pink arrow is shown? That's a separate, because that
Yeah,
goes
so
across
we
the
have an existing,
property.
right, we have an existing easement here for access to our water tank. And then this would just expand on the about 18 acres that exist in unincorporated Garfield County, and then the 42 that exists in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ullman.
Thank you. Two questions, I guess, Brian. One is in the recommendation, it talks about we're going to get fee title to the property, and I didn't see that in the motion from the Park and Rec Commission. Is that part of what we're accepting here? Is that we get an easement originally, but then later we're going to get fee title to the property?
I think what's being offered by the proponents is a grant of a conservation easement to be held by the city, which would allow for that trail access and easements. But correct me if I'm wrong there, Brian.
That's right. So and I believe Mike Maple is on, and he can speak to that a little more. But yeah, so that would be a trail easement. Yes.
I think
so we wouldn't get any.
I think the Parks Commission was recommending to ultimately try to to pursue fee title to the property as an ultimate goal, but that wasn't part of their motion itself because it wasn't on the table, I believe.
Okay. Second question is when we last talked about this, we talked about what does it cost to the city if we accept this? What are the annual costs? What are the trail costs? And then we had some discussion about the trail along 4 Mile Road. Do we have any? I don't remember the numbers we were talking about, Brian. What were those numbers?
There's pretty minimal maintenance costs of this. We don't have any improvements planned on here. I think at the most we might have some trailhead amenities like a portal light or something like that. Maybe even a trash receptacle, but we're not really planning on making any major improvements up here outside of the trail system. So this is really to be considered as open space access, which is fairly staff light and cost light. We're talking maybe, just a couple $1,000s a year.
What about developing the trails themselves?
So originally we had partnered with Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers to go after some grant opportunities for that. We were kind of leaving it up to them to help lead out the development of those trails. I think that's still the opportunity there. We probably would do a grant match with conservation funds for that. They ended up not being able to pursue a GOCO and Conservation Trust grant that they were hoping for with this, but I believe their intent is still to assist with the trail development here. It might just take us another year to get the funding together.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Paula.
Just a little clarity, Brian, this includes, we'd be approving the annexation of these acreages, this acreage as well. Is that correct tonight, if we move forward with that condition about access to the airport road?
Yeah, so we'll defer to council on that. That was originally the request when we were talking with Carl, that it would probably be best for us to annex in those 18 acres that are in unincorporated Garfield County. That would be our recommendation.
So, but you're not actually approving that annexation, Paula. You would just be, if you wanted to include it in the motion, directing that those annexation proceedings move forward as part of this package.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
I wouldn't say the applicant, but I guess the applicant, Mr. Maple, has joined us. He has his hands up. Mike, what?
Sure, I appreciate the opportunity to for you all to consider this. First of all, I just wanted to let you know that both Robert and I are on this Zoom call if you have any questions for us. But I thought it might be slightly helpful to sort of back up and do a big picture overview of what is being proposed here. So Glenwood Land Company owns 2 parcels of land, 32 acres on which there are vested rights for 38 duplex units. We own an adjacent 18 acres of land that is in the unincorporated Garfield County. And so we are proposing to grant to have the city take a conservation easement on all 50 acres. Previously, it was 45 acres. We were expecting to carve off and sell 5 acres to an adjacent landowner. That effort has not been successful. So now the proposal is for 50 acres. The other thing that is important, I think, for the city council to understand and recognize is that the trails that were shown on the map that you were looking at earlier are all essentially all there. This property has had banded trails on it for decades and decades and decades, and we have allowed that use. And so, we think that this is a well-established, community asset that is already heavily used, albeit on a banded basis. So, a great opportunity for the community to have the right to use this and to preserve that right in perpetuity by extinguishing the development rights that we have for 38 duplex units. So the proposal is to have the city take a conservation easement on all 50 acres of land, and subsequent to the conservation easement, we also propose to dedicate this land to the city. So the city, our expectation is that the city would end up in the ownership of it. The most, the one piece that is different, if you will, from what you looked at, I think it was actually way back in December or January, is that it's now 50 acres instead of 45 acres. And we had a solid plan as part of the carve off of 5 acres to secure this access to Airport Road. We no longer have that, both a reduction of 5 acres and that access to Airport Road. So that's the condition that the Parks and Recreation Commission proposed. I would submit to you that given the historic use of these bandit trails, the community already uses and appreciates this land. And while it would undoubtedly be better if we're able to secure an access easement to Airport Road, it's still a fantastic piece of land, open space land for a part of the community that has few open space opportunities.
Jonathan, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I don't know if this is a Brian question or a Carl question, on a conservation easement. So the city would be applying for the conservation easement and we would incur the cost, or how does that work?
No. Glenwood Land Company, Mike Maple and his team would be doing all the work to get that conservation. We are the accepting entity
Okay.
of conservation easement. So think of us in the same position as, like, say, ABLT as far as this goes. We've done this on a number of other locations, primarily in the early to mid 2000s. Some locations kind of over in West Glenwood, we did the same thing where it's nice to preserve the areas, but they don't really rise to the level that somebody like an ABLT really wants to deal with the conservation easements.
Okay, thank you. I was just seeing what our role was. Thank you. That clarifies it.
Any other questions? All right. I'll turn it over to the public for public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for motion. Go ahead, Charlie.
I move that we accept the staff recommendation and accept the easement subject to the condition of getting the access to Airport Road.
I'll second. Moved by Charlie, seconded by myself. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Maple. All right. Next item is, well, we're not letting Brian off the hook yet. Parks and Recreation Department changes.
Okay. Yeah, so we had talked a little bit about this with council during the manager comments last council meeting, and just wanted to come back. We said we would come back to council with some solutions to some of the staffing issues that we had discussed. And so I wanted to give you kind of a little bit of an overview of what the impacts are from the pandemic to the department. So when we shut down, we laid off 118 staff. And really we kicked ourselves back to about 20 years ago before the community center opened. Right now, we are, of those 118 staff, we only had 13 that have come back. We are posting about, we have 14 positions currently posted, which is about half of the positions that we need to fill. So there's still another 16 that need to get posted. And each of these, you see this slide, each of these job codes or positions, like a lifeguard or a day porter, downtown maintenance lead, things like that. Each of these positions have several slots for the positions. You know, we would hire, 18 lifeguards. You have one job code for lifeguard, 18 slots. So right now, we currently have a total of 180 slots still needing to be filled to get back to pre-pandemic levels. So our department is about half the size as it was pre-pandemic. So wanted to have a little discussion on what these impacts are, and also what's kind of causing this. Obviously, this is not a issue that is specific to the Parks and Recreation Department. Each of our departments are experiencing this on some level. Our department just happens to be a little more public facing with our services. This is also not specific to the city as an organization. This is an issue nationwide. And so what are some of the things that are contributing to this? One is that we're in a very fiercely competitive job market. Workers are in super high demand, and applicants are leveraging other offers and employment, even with the city, offers to get raises in other positions. In some cases, we go through, we even interview people, and then we don't hear from them. Or we even have some staff that only stay on for a few weeks and then leave. Our staff are actively being poached by other agencies that come in and recruit them out of our organization. We're in a wage war with other employers in the area. And as a public agency, we're just unable to compete with some of the private for-profit enterprises that are around. Many organizations are evolving part-time offerings to full-time position. That's an interesting trend that we're seeing not only with public agencies, but also some of the private employers in the area as well. A lot of those employees that are unhappy with the type of work or working conditions, positions that are labor intensive, high responsibility and stress, or have safety risks, or are just plain gross, have an abundance of other options at higher pay to choose from. And so really competitive job market. We're also experiencing, it's very difficult to have the capacity in the department and in the city for onboarding. Rebuilding staff levels is painfully slow right now. We rely on a lot of people to support many of these areas that we have. And I want to kind of focus on two of those that are in critical condition right now, which is the community center, specifically with our aquatics area, and parks maintenance specifically. Like I mentioned, we've laid off the 118 part-time employees, and those two areas especially are fully supported by part-time and seasonal employees. So even if we do get applicants, the organization can't hire all the positions simultaneously and refill the 260 slots at once because there's not enough staffing capacity to hire, onboard, and train while trying to complete all the other functions. So we're kind of bottlenecked. We're able to bring them on as fast as they're applying for, but we kind of have to stage it along. One of the things that definitely is an issue, and we hear this a lot with exit interviews, is cost of living is prohibitive in the area, especially for the employee market that we're going after for these positions. Our cost of living has increased dramatically in the Valley, and with some estimates putting us at around 135% above the national average. So the pay just isn't commensurate, I can say that word, with the cost of living. You have above 25% increase in housing that was reported from the Garfield County Market Analysis Report from their Economic Development Department. Increase in gas prices is painful for commuters that are having to purchase houses in communities farther out. So we have, especially in these positions, we have younger staff that have limited advancement with reasonable living wage, and just are not staying in the area. They're moving on to more affordable locations, but they're not being replaced by an older worker segment either. And they're not being replaced by younger workers who have better options. So especially with the issue of affordable housing, we hear things from developers who, they have a response of, well, too bad, so sad. If you want to live in this beautiful area, you got to pay the price, cry me a river. But that really does our community a disservice, because it's the residents who are crying a river and complaining to us every week as we field complaints after complaint on the condition of their favorite amenities with parks and trails, availability of recreation programs and facilities. And all the things that make Glenwood Springs so attractive for living and working here are deteriorating without a sustainable workforce to provide those services and amenities. Our department's resources are slowly becoming unsustainable for the scope that is being added on. The nature of our positions are evolving as our scope grows. And so we no longer can rely just on seasonal positions. We are year-round in our services. And by the time seasonal hires are being onboarded, we're already behind. So with that year-round operations focus, we're just experiencing a lot more stress in the job, and it's increasing for our full-time staff that are year-round. Deferred maintenance is increasing as emergencies crop up and they have to drop things to handle that. Such as having to shut down all of our water systems, which normally take about 2.5 days, and we got it done in an evening when we had to shut down with the runoff issues. So public opinions and transient issues are pretty intense right now. There are difficult issues for employees to address. Maintenance of parks is suffering. You've seen comments from that, and we get it quite often. With few seasonal part-time maintenance workers for our downtown area and parks, medians, roundabouts. We are getting to each of these concerns. It's just taking us slower and longer to do so. But our scope will keep increasing. Beyond 7th Street that was brought on in the downtown area and the 6th Street roundabout connections, we're doing plans on the 6th Street improvements and landscaping that'll be done there, 7th Street and the Rafta underpass connection. South Midland will be coming online. The airport recently came under our department, and we're doing that with department resources rather than the Friends of the Columbus Springs Airport that was doing work out there. We're looking at Southbridge and what impacts that will have for maintenance as well. So these issues continue to compound as we bring new infrastructure on. And while our staffing and budget resources continue to diminish a little bit. So we are right now are more than 120 staffing hours missing from parks weekly with our current staffing level. And we were once in a position where we worked very hard to be more efficient and improve our budget, and we've decreased budget in a lot of areas. We're now at the point where, okay, we've reached that efficiency level, but that scope keeps going, but we're not increasing resources to meet that. Another part of the problem is cost recovery is declining. We have approximately 2/3 of our community center revenue that comes from membership dues and daily entry fees, program fees, things like that. The rest of it is a transfer from ANI. And so it's not just a general fund budgeted budget. We're heavily supported by user fees. And the aquatic center is a big part of that draw. Aquatics our hours are currently decreasing. They are decreased, and we're worried that we're going to have to keep pulling back. And that's just going to lead to fewer memberships next year. Roughly half of our memberships that are purchased are influenced by the availability of the pool. 75% of our family households with younger kids purchase memberships because of the year-round pool. Of our daily users, user fee, 90% of those drop in revenues are coming because of the pool. And what that looks like is last month in May, we were hitting about half of what our normal revenue is. So May, pre-pandemic, in like example for 2019, our May revenue just for drop-ins was about $12,000. We're at about $6,200 this last year for May. And because Parks and Rec can cover many of the costs of our services with user fees, we're able to take pressure off of other departments. And so it's really important that we are able to maintain that user fee supported budget and not pull more support from the general fund. That way budget can go towards departments like police and fire and things like that. Just in sort of a total revenue comparison for months, we had $147,800 in revenue in 2019 in May, and we're down by about a third of that, about a little over 100,000 for revenue in all of our recreation department this year. So that's a big concern. And then lastly, and probably what is hitting hardest at the morale department as far as these impacts is that we're just unable to fulfill the service levels that we want to provide to the community. This one is exceptionally painful because there was a time when we would be celebrating National Parks and Recreation Month in July, and we would have a resolution for council, and we just don't feel that great about where we are at with Parks and Recreation this year. I'd be excitedly telling council of all the amazing things we're doing and to better the quality of life for our residents and visitors. And I'd much rather be celebrating our successes than kind of wallowing in our challenges and sharing some of these struggles with you tonight. But at this point, it's this point of being unable to fulfill service levels is really at the heart of the discussion. Because it's heartbreaking and it's demoralizing to our staff to know that we're not meeting the expectations of the community. The pull and stress on full-time staff to cover 180 empty slots while trying to get their own jobs done puts a huge strain on them. And this also presents a lot of safety concerns as well. Typically we would have lifeguards work on a 3-person rotation during their shifts. That allows for intermediate break, so they can maintain a vigilant attention needed to constantly monitor and be ready to act on an instant's notice to make a rescue. It's kind of like being a paramedic with fire, except you're always responding to a call all the time. People are passionate about their amenities, and I think what's most concerning with the situation is that we're starting to lose full-time staff as well, with the absence of part-time staff having to cover that. And our people love Parks and Recreation. Our staff know that they love serving the community. So we have very loyal staff, but I see the stress and burnout that's happening in them. And the public just, they care about and comment about Parks and Recreation in a way you just don't see in a lot of government areas. They consider these their parks, their facilities and programs. These are their instructors. People, when they take a fitness class, they come for the instructor, they come for the staff. And it's their life. That's what Parks and Recs provide for them, and what makes Golden Springs so attractive. The public takes it personally when they can't bring their family to the pool, or they see trash and waste along their daily jog route, or their family's gravesite looks to be unmaintained. And when I feel those complaints, I take it personally as well. But like I said, this is not just a Parks and Recreation issue, and I do want to make a note on that. Many of the other department heads are seeing similar issues and impacts, and they're just, they're struggling just as much. We're just seeing a lot more by the public as far as these impacts go. So I want to show you a little bit about what that looks like. In pre-pandemic 2019, we had 45 lifeguards on at this time last year. Currently, we have 6. And that obviously provides a huge shortfall. So we have 5 full-time staff that are having to help cover a part of that staffing hour shortfall. John Volk, who's our aquatic supervisor, he is on the stand 35 hours a week guarding. Because of that, he's unable to do his full-time job of training new staff, providing in-services, additional programming, CPR classes for the city and the public, swim classes, scheduling his staff to get their schedules at the very end of the week. But most importantly, maintenance of aquatic systems. So we have a lot of deferred maintenance. Right now, our hot tub is inoperable because of the deferred maintenance. Tiffany Lindenberg, who's our fitness coordinator, is another one. She's working 12 hours a week, 3 4-hour shifts. And so there's a reduced number of fitness classes, which would help bring in members. Our Parks and Recreation administrator, Karsten, she's working about 16 hours, doing 4 4-hour shifts. And so she's not able to get to everything with the emails and permits and helping me do my job. And so it's an impact to the director level as well, with all the different time-consuming clerical work that has to get done, that she's able to help me out with. Andrew Cole, who's our athletic supervisor, he's spending several shifts a week. And so he has extremely long days covering for sports officials, who we are also short on, outside of his regular program coordination. So some days he's working 14-hour days, 2 or 3 times a week. And then Pat Miller, who's our recreation manager, who's providing backup for shifts when we don't have any other staff. Because so many of our other staff in the department are stretched, he has no assistance with event help. I mean, I think me and Matt Langhorst, and I think we have a gal in HR who's helping, and some of our spouses are going to help run 4th of July this week because we just don't have the event staff to support it. This also has a huge impact on our front desk. From people who are upset because they can't get in the pool because we have a capacity limit. We have 60 people on the waiting list for private swim lessons, and they're just getting lots of complaints. And I think Deborah is also going to be out there helping us staff 4th of July along with her husband. So I'm probably going to have to owe him a lunch, and we appreciate all the support help that we're getting from other departments. But these are things that can only happen on kind of a one-time basis. It's not sustainable long-term. We have, because of the limited guards, we have a capacity cap. So we're not able to do the 3-guard rotation. They have to stay on for their whole shifts. our pool capacity, which is usually about 250 people, which we would rarely hit except on heavy school days when schools will bring students into the community center. That 250 capacity is now 25 people. And so we rarely need to turn people away previously, and now every single day we have about an average of 30 people on a waiting list waiting to get into the pool. Also, we have reduced operating hours where we would normally be operating about 73 hours a week. Right now we're at 51. And so what that looks like is that we're closed on Sundays and we're closed most Fridays as well. So we're unable to fulfill services to the public. On the park side of it, while we don't have a way to measure park usage very accurately outside of manually counting, we do have a way of measuring trail use. And so that gives us a real good use of what outdoor amenity use is looking like right now. We have several trail counters along our trail systems. And just like last year with the pandemic, where we were seeing, it started out as a 40% increase and grew to a 60% increase, we see that same trend again this year of a 60% increase compared to pre-pandemic 2017, 18, 19 in outdoor space use. And so this is looking back on the week of June 14th through the 20th, June 21st through the 27th was the same. So you have where we would normally have 13 seasonal park employees assisting us with parks maintenance and maintains of these trails and outdoor space parks. Right now we have 5. Normally I would have 5 staff downtown, and right now I have 1. We have a second that just actually came back yesterday. But our hard trail, used like an Atkinson trail, where we would see about 28 people an hour. Now we're seeing over 70 people an hour on there during our high times. On some of the soft trails like Red Mountain, where we were seeing a trend of about somewhere between 150 and 200 people during the week. Now it's over 400 people a week. So a lot of heavy use in our outdoor spaces. So we wanted to come and not just talk about, okay, well, here's the problem and whine about that. We also wanted to bring council, how are we addressing this? What are the solutions and strategies to get us through this issue? So some of our strategies that we're looking to present to council and just would like to get your blessing on. We want to increase part-time wages, and that's something that we have already done in the aquatics area to help to incentivize people to apply for the positions. So we've increased part-time lifeguard and our maintenance worker pay to $16 an hour. And hopefully we'll see a better response in applicants from that. We've adjusted, and to give you kind of an idea, the lifeguard pay was at $12.90 to start, and now that's $1,600 for aquatic staff. Second would be to add on full-time positions, to add 2 full-time head lifeguards. That would allow us to increase swim open hours to an average of 70 hours per week, with the whole pool being open, back up to capacity of 250 people, without having to pull our full-time staff to cover that, and add an additional 2 full-time parks positions, one that would help cover downtown and one that would help cover in other areas of park maintenance. So obviously that has a budget impact. How do we address that? The first thing we're going to be doing is increasing fees. So increase community center membership and program fees by 8%, and that would take place on September 7th following our maintenance closure. We also propose to increase our fees for our swim teams and pool rentals, as well as our aquatic programs by about 15%. Another thing that we'd like to put in would be a signing bonus and kind of a retention bonus of $250 if an employee stays for 30 days, and an additional $750, so $1,000 total, if they stay through the end of the season, which would be end of October. So that's projected at about a $9,000 cost to implement that. we would shift our part-time budgets to help cover the full-time positions. So shift a portion of that budget in our parks and community center to help support those positions, and then reinstate the recruitment bonus, which is a program that HR has had before for employee referrals, whether it be $100 or maybe a few $100s. That support would come from each department that is recruiting, and so that bonus would be given. That incentive would be given to each person hired. For each person hired, whether it's a part-time or full-time position. And then lastly is to adjust our operating hours and capacity back to where it should be. So we would increase our operating hours to 70. What that looks like is instead of opening at 8 a.m., we would be going from 8 to 6. Monday through Thursday, we would go from 6:30 to 7:30. Monday through Thursday. Instead of 8:30 to 4:15 on Fridays, we would increase that to 6:30 to 5:30. And then 11:30 from 11:30 to 4:30 on the weekend to 10:30 to 5:30. So from 51 operational hours to 70 operational hours. That gives a potential increase of about $6,000 in drop-in fees, plus the swim program revenue on top of that. So just for the number side of it, so you kind of understand, well, so what does all that mean budget wise? What is the ask to support this? This is the breakdown. So the total cost is about $156,000 for the aquatic side of it to implement all these ideas. Increase part-time wages and add 2 full-time through the end of the year for 2021. Now we're able to cover that with our remaining part-time aquatics budget because we haven't been able to hire on lifeguards. And so we have that capacity in the budget, and we have about $34,000 that we can then also use from our part-time budget to support the full-time positions. And so we have our full-time budget that's proposed for the 2 positions with benefits would be about $78,000. We would take that $34,000 reallocation from the part-time budget, and then also apply our GoCo Resilient Communities grant, which we got last year for critical and emergency operation support. That includes staffing as well, and so that gives us that allows us to fulfill the financial support for those 2 full-time positions through 2021. For parks, through the rest of this year, we have our parks budget, and then we have only spent about $52,000 of that. So we would be able to support the positions with the remaining parks budget, and then just like aquatics, be able to apply $25,000 to support the full-time staff. So with the full-time staff budget, we are looking at, from what we have spent this year so far, we've had some turnover, and so have a little bit of additional budget to play around with. Our 2021 full-time proposal for the 2 additions would be $107,000, and then we'd have the reallocation of the part-time budget plus the surplus of what's remaining in our full-time to be able to support that for this year. So 0% increase to the general fund for 2021. But these are full-time positions we're asking for. So obviously they're not going to be temporary. We're not going to put it out as temporary. So what does that look like for next year then? So the aquatics portion of that, the total cost is about $313,000. What we're looking at with that, though, would be a 0 increase to the general fund. We would have a little bit of an overage we need to cover with part-time, and then obviously the full amount from the full-time. We would be able to have, we calculated at about $46,000 increased revenue from our fee adjustments for membership fees, and then about $12,000 increase from aquatic program and swim team increases in fees. And then we have about somewhere $150,000, $200,000. We're right now going on the low end, but from that unallocated stimulus funding that's available, we would pull from that to to support the rest of the position. So zero increase to general fund for 2022. The current A&I transfer for the community center is $1 million. Back in 2008, that transfer was 1.137 million. And we've been decreasing that every year. Back in 2017, it was $430,000 that we have decreased from, so 1.4 million. So we've decreased that A&I transfer $430,000 since 2017. So one strategy or recommendation, which we're going to talk about when we get into the budget packet coming up here soon, actually, would be to just roll back a couple years to the transfer level that we had from A&I, back in like 2018. That offset would be able to fund that, those additions to the full-time. For parks, that coverage shortfall, 20,000, and then for the full-time, we have our proposed budget. Some offsets that we could implement would be a slight increase to our fee and permit fees. And as we go forward, if we open up to commercial use of the parks, we would anticipate those going up even more. So we're seeing at least a $12,000 revenue increase from that. And then we have left over $36,000 from the unallocated stimulus funding, somewhere between 36 or 80,000, depending on what actually is left over. But that would basically leave us with about 38,000 that would be needed to support those positions from the general fund. We would look at about a 33% increase to park shelter rentals. And then the long-term increase would be 342,650. I'm sorry. I want to talk a little bit about, in the staff report, we talked about our downtown maintenance. Staff had approved 342,650 was approved for bringing the downtown maintenance in-house. We had the downtown maintenance budget was about $450,000 before that. That was going towards contracted services, and we were looking at another $120,000 on top of that the next year. In order to control those costs and bring that down, we brought that in-house and we cut off $100,000 from that right away. And since that time, that budget has been decreased down to $200,000. So what we would look at, a proposal to council, would simply be to roll back that allocation for downtown support from $200,000, where it is currently, back to the $342,000 that council had originally approved for it. But keep in mind, this is really sort of the bare minimum of what we need to do now, just to kind of get us by. As we bring on additional areas and those scopes changes, we might need to look at increasing resources to be able to support that. So that's our proposal to council. Again, there's no budget ask. We're just asking to be able to hire on 4 full-time staff that would be covered by our current budget for this year. And then we have the ability to, through the unallocated stimulus funds, to cover the majority of the positions through next year. The increase that we would ask that wouldn't be covered would be about $38,000. I'd heard that the stimulus funding, we had 200,000 left over, and then I heard it was 150. So depending on whether or not it's 200 or 150, there might not be any impact to general fund at all next year. But that'll come before council with the budget packet. And we can discuss that, the 2020 budget at that time, as well as how do we support this fully going forward. So that's kind of our strategies, and I'd be happy to answer any question council has. At this time, what we're looking for is a motion of support to be able to hire on, or at least put out the positions for full-time, and hopefully with these other strategies that'll help us to be able to bring services back up to where we need to be.
Questions? Go ahead, Paul.
Deborah, are all of the departments looking at this kind of, are we gonna have to consider this for each department for getting people back on board?
I would say not each department. Brian's department is clearly struggling the most because, you know, for better or for worse, when we were horribly terrified about how long the impacts of COVID would go on, we laid off all of his part-time staff, right? We didn't do that to any other department. So I do think, you know, employment models are shifting. So this will probably not be your only request to go to full-time. If we have trouble hiring in a traditionally part-time position, I think it's something we're gonna try. So not as much as Brian, but probably at some point, yes. Like Brian, I mean, I think one of the reasons Matt wanted to hire a full-time person is they couldn't hire a part-time person.
Okay. And Brian, the current, I understand everything that you've told us about capacity and number of employees and having to cut back hours, but are we still seeing kind of a residual, people don't really want to go into a building and participate in activities and that type of stuff? Are we seeing that, like you talked about May numbers being a lot lower than previous Mays? And I'm like, are we still in that COVID caution kind of
No,
thing?
we're definitely coming out of that. You know, it is ramping up. We're not back to 100%, but the trend lines in our memberships and revenues have been very strong. You know, our Little Rec Explorers is booked. I mean, we've been selling, you know, hundreds of those memberships for daycare passes, and our fitness classes are all booked. Like I said, I wasn't kidding. We have an average of 30 people a day on a waiting list to get into the pool. And we have 60 to 90 people on waiting lists for swim programs. So they're ready to come back. We just don't have the staffing capacity to provide the services.
And you mentioned a few people who are part-time right now, or maybe I just misunderstood and I'm just going to pick one out because I recognize the name. Like Tiffany was working 16 hours a week, and I was like,
Tiffany's full-time.
Oh, she is full-time. She's training then, or she's doing classes for that many hours a week. Okay, I was just kind of like, wait a minute. So we're kind of looking at this. You know, obviously you had a budget for all of these people in 2020. That kind of got wiped up. We went to the 2021 budget and said, we really want to be where we were in 2020. And if I'm understanding this correctly, just because we're moving them to full-time, it just kind of adjusts what's needed money-wise, as opposed to a part-time where you're not paying benefits and all of that type of stuff. Am I getting that correctly?
Right, yeah. So, right. Obviously, full-time position, you know, two part-time positions does not equal a full-time position, mostly because of benefits and things like that.
Okay.
Right.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks boy, it's a tough situation to be in, to try to rebuild that department after all of those, you know, having to cut back so hard and everything. So I really appreciate you laying all that out for us and what a challenge it is. And I also think the community's changing, and, you know, the relationship to work is changing. And I don't know if we're done seeing what those changes will impact and evolve post-COVID, but I think we're seeing some of the impacts of that now. And so I guess my main questions, and I have an appreciation for that, and I understand going to more full-time positions. I also think it gives us probably a more stable and satisfied workforce that can, you know, try to exist here and have more stable employment and have some benefits. So I support that, as opposed to more of a multitude of part-time employees, you know, where it's appropriate. I guess my main questions are for you and Deborah is where have those stimulus funds been residing, and which were they from the CARES Act? And did we have other, have they been discussed in any other context or use?
We amended our budget, I think about a month and a half ago. And we brought in at the time what we thought we were going to get, which was $1,050,000. When the actual data came, when it actually came out, we were able to draw the money down. There's almost an additional 200,000. So the $1 million is sitting in a reserve to be figured out. This, like, we have about a 200,000 that we have not figured out. And I thought, like, this is kind of exactly what part of this money is supposed to be spent for, lost revenue, rebuilding. So you still have a huge chunk set aside, but hopefully this helps us rebuild our Parks and Rec department.
Right, and it can be used for this type of expenditure. I think Brian mentioned that.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
The IRS guidelines are still changing, but as far as we know right now, yes.
So this is not depleting our stimulus money. Okay.
No.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Anybody from the public like to weigh in? See none, I'll bring it back for a motion.
I would move that we adopt the staff recommendation strategies for the Parks and Recreation Department and let them go forward.
I second the motion.
The motion by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. Further discussion? Tony.
Sorry, I was muted. This is really a big ask, Brian, and I know these are difficult times, but I've said it before, we all need to live within our budgets. And I'm just, how do you compete with the hot springs pool, for example, at the rec center when you can't pay as much as they do? I understand the competitiveness for work for employees, but we have a budget process, and that's why I'm sort of torn on this. But I really appreciate all the hard work you've done and that your staff does. Thank you.
Shirley.
I just wanted to make a comment, and you don't have to reply on this, Brian, but on the events, I'd like to say, Pat Miller's been doing a great job. I've seen a couple of the events downtown and everything, and I think those are really valuable to the community. It's always been, I kind of feel like if the city's going to put on events, they should be geared towards our residents and our locals. I don't see it as the city's job to be gearing events necessarily for our visitors. I see that more falling under the chamber or other industries that work in that tourism industry. So I think, if there needs to be any scaling back of events or focusing of priority events, I would love to see it focus more on events for our locals, things like Summer of Music or things like, that work for the locals. And I would also encourage you, a lot of those events, especially if they're appreciated and they're focused on the locals, can really, the community has in the past been supportive of events like that by volunteering. So I think if there's a way to incorporate community volunteers into some of these events and building that on a long-term basis, and maybe there's some benefit to them of being there at the event and helping out. But certainly, I hope that you can look at considering that and building that into some of these events. I think it might help take some of the pressure off on the day of.
Absolutely, we're definitely there for volunteer support of events, and it is a priority. And we do try to create our events and plan around for residents. I think visitors get an added bonus from that, but yeah, we've gotten great feedback from residents in the community on all of our events, and everyone's very happy that we're jumping back into it. And I hope to be able to see all of you this weekend on the 4th of July.
Any other comments or questions? I guess I'll say really quickly, we have this $20 million, I think it cost $20 million for that rec center 20 years ago. So I don't know what the current, assessed value might be of it, but, if we're going to end, probably tens of millions of dollars worth of land in parks, and if we're going to maintain that asset to any level, we must maintain it, whether it's staffing it, whether it's keeping it open so it can attract people. We need to make an investment in this, I don't know, $50-100 million worth of assets that the city has. And so I think that if we don't make that investment, then we might as well just, sell off the parks and close up our Parks and Rec department. And that would be crazy, because I think it's the most beloved and utilized public facing department that we have in the city. Outside of finance, of course, Steve Boyd, and you bet. Everybody loves finance. So I think, unless we're going to take the dramatic action of doing something crazy like that, it does, if you have a leaky roof, whether you have the money to fix it or you need to put it on a credit card, you have to fix that roof, because your house is the asset, and the community center and the parks are a large part of what makes a community a community. So I'll be supporting the motion. Charlie.
Right, as I understood it, this is fairly revenue neutral, at least for this year. Is that right?
Yes, there's no impact to the general fund through the rest of this year or through 2022. But
okay.
We'll bring 2022 with the budget process and pack it before council for consideration.
No. We can certainly look at 2022 as we do that budget. So I'm going to support this as well. And I just appreciate all the hard work you've done in trying to figure out how to maneuver your staff and get them to do what you can do. And I know we're all concerned about some of the conditions in the Landfill Plaza, those kind of places. And I know you guys are doing a great job within your staff limits. So thank you.
Ingrid.
I'm going to just echo what many of you have all said, and that is that I am so supportive of the Parks and Rec department. I feel like so often it's an amenity that's almost comparable to, water and electric, and that people converge and live within our community for the benefits that they can have and the sense of community that they can enjoy. And I think the Parks and Rec department deserve to be funded comparably to those other entities, especially, and I think Councilor Kaup made that point, is that I really like the focus to be on our constituents and activities that are for their benefit. So, I'm saying that now, but I also think that it just reiterates the necessity of being well-staffed. And we have had an interesting last year and a half. And I think it's really important to be malleable in our approach to how we resolve these issues. And I appreciate the creativity and the resourcefulness that you and your department have kind of utilized to come up with this solution to it. So I too will be supporting it.
Is there a motion?
There already was.
I believe it's already on the table, John.
Yeah, with a second.
All right. Ryan, let's take roll.
All right, Counselor Wusso,
Yes.
Counselor Stepp,
Yes.
Counselor Hershey,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willman,
Yes.
Mayor Godis.
Yes. Thank you, Tony. Yes.
Thank you, council.
Good, yes, Jonathan.
I know. I'm expressing my appreciation.
We're not quite done. Counselor Kaup.
Yes.
All right. 7-0.
I thought it was 8-0.
9-0.
Well, now after you guys, it's like 12-0.
All right. Thank you all. Brian, thank you for that presentation. Every employer's dealing with it. But boy, you're just getting kicked in the teeth. We're getting kicked in the teeth as a community through all aspects. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. We're glad we can help a little bit anyway. Next item on the agenda, report from city manager.
Okay, I was gonna ask Jen to give you guys an official update on your special meeting, I believe on July 29th. Before she goes, I will just say, due to supply chain issues, the city council chambers will not be available for full use, meaning both in person and Zoom technology, because our contractor just can't get the parts he needs due to the pandemic. So we'll keep you updated. We don't think we can't change anything by switching to another vendor. It's just kind of like the state of the world right now. And with that, Jen, explain what our solution is for July 29th, because I think you've moved past my latest knowledge on it.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I think our current plan is based on both the noticing that went out, which has to go out in a certain amount of time. And just also, we think that it's one of those meetings where it will be better to have everybody together, that we will have a regular city council meeting in city council chambers without a Zoom hybrid option for the 29th. We may have to have a couple of consultants on the phone, but the technology in the room just really doesn't work well for the hybrid technology. So we can go back to the 2019 where we the one consultant, I think specifically for the development team, isn't able to be physically here. And so we can put them on the spaceship phone. And I don't know, Carl, if you had anything else to add.
So I don't. I do think that it's kind of critical that you guys be there in person. I know, Charlie, that is going to be problematic. We were trying to work out another option for you. You may just have to watch a tape, because I don't know if we're going to be able to be broadcasting even at that point, but we're trying to figure it out as best we can.
That was my question. If you're unable to do Zoom, it'll be taped so I can watch it after the fact.
Yeah.
I think we would do the YouTube the old-fashioned way that we did it, and I am checking with Alyssa to just make sure that that's still possible.
So we're going to make every effort so that you can be totally up to speed, Charlie, to sit. We anticipate more than likely all we'll get through is staff presentations and hopefully public comment that evening. It's going to be, I mean, we did 3 nights, Jen, of planning commission, probably almost 12 hours of testimony. So hopefully it's not quite that much for you guys, but it will be significant. So I anticipate this being one of 2 nights that you spend on the application.
And I will say, just in addition to the regular noticing that we need to do that's legally required, we'll try to make sure that we also make sure that people really have an understanding that this meeting is in person.
And Charlie had mentioned something earlier about, is it a possibility? And I don't know, maybe I'll turn my eyes towards Deborah to have that. I think we're all really, really excited about getting back in person on July 15th. Is there any way that we could do a meeting like we did about 2 years ago? I think almost exactly when the AC went out in City Hall, we had it over the rec center. Is that a possibility, or is that just too much of a lift right now?
I think you can certainly, for the 15th, have it at the community center. I just don't know if we can have the Zoom component with it. So I mean, I think if you guys are okay with just a regular meeting and the community center is open, which we will have to check on, then I think you can do it, right? You can also probably do that in council chambers too. It's just, what is it okay not to have the Zoom aspect of it until we can get it fixed? And if the answer is yes, there is absolutely no reason why we can't hold these meetings in person.
I moved to have it at the mayor's house on the 15th.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Be there. Have your wife make snacks.
I will make snacks.
Okay.
My preference be council chambers. It's probably easier to do the recording that we need to do in there since the technology's there and people want to watch it later. That's right. My preference would be the 15th.
Alyssa does think, and don't hold us to it, that we might be able to do the Zoom at the community center as well. So let us run that down, and we will try to remember to tell you where the meeting is before the night of the 15th.
I guess I would say, lacking formal direction, if it just doesn't work out because of logistics, staff involvement, whatever it might be, just let us know. I think it's our desire, but not our, overwhelming, pound our fist on the table desire. At least that's my impression for myself.
I think everyone is really tired of Zoom.
All right. Anything else, Deborah?
Yes, I am sorry to let you guys know and the public know that we received word that we did not get awarded the brick grant today. We're gonna do a debrief. We had great support from our state, our senators. We're gonna pick ourselves up tomorrow, dust ourselves off, and keep trying. So don't lose hope. We're gonna keep going. That's all I got.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks for the many tireless hours you spent trying to get that. I know it's a big disappointment to us all, but it's probably particularly troubling when you just put so much effort into it, and you did. So thank you for that. And I'm pretty positive, though, that political will that we built up is not going to be for loss. There's a lot of infrastructure money at the state and the federal level that I hope that we can tap into in the next 6 to 12 months as well. Carl, you got anything?
The only thing I know, there's been articles in the paper and whatnot, but just a note that on the RMI state case that we were successful across the board on that. I did send you a privilege and confidential memo with some information regarding it. I think I got that out. I can't remember. It's been a long week. If not, we'll get out a more detailed kind of analysis and what to expect. So anyway, appreciate your support on that. I also wanted to say, thanks to Deborah and everybody on the team on the brick grant, because that was a huge lift and a lift for you guys. So it's disappointing, but we're getting really good at this. And so hopefully we can get it nailed down. It took us a couple of times the last time around, so we'll see if we can't get there. But thank you.
All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
A second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-1 to 1. I'm counting you as an abstain, Tony. I didn't see a hand go up. All right. Have a good night, everybody.